Audiobook title Sorcery Monarch 01 to 359 by Falconen Par 01 Chapter 1. Transmigration Year 129 of the Netheril Era, March. Western Continent, East Coast. This region, newly brought under the rule of the Netheril Empire, is still filled with wilderness and danger. The Seventh Council of the Netheril Empire issued a call for pioneering, which was met with enthusiasm by nobles across the land, sparking a wave of grand expeditions. Many second sons and lower-ranked heirs of noble families were forced to embark on these perilous pioneering journeys. A breeze blew, dispersing the hazy mist, revealing a muddy dirt road filled with water puddles. A caravan of over 100 people slowly moved along the winding dirt road. The poor road conditions severely slowed their progress. Stepping down, the faintly stinking soft mud squelched aside, stubbornly clinging to the soles, making the boots heavier. After just a few dozen steps, the soles would be thick with mud, forcing one to slow down to clean it off. Otherwise, their stamina would quickly be drained. Fortunately, the members of this caravan were all seasoned veterans, long accustomed to such roads, and their skillful movements in cleaning the mud off their soles allowed them to maintain a slow yet steady pace. Most of them were young men wearing light, rough clothing, mentally prepared for the long journey ahead. They pushed 10 fully loaded wooden carts, aiding the hardworking mules at the front. At the center of the caravan, 10 soldiers in leather armor, wearing expressions of worry and uncertainty about the future, surrounded a carriage. The carriage's door frame bore the family crest of a white magic tower, now stained with spots of mud. This was the crest of the Ser family, a well-known family of spellcasting nobles on the Karl Plains, though unheard of on the East Coast. A faint stench entered his nose, and Matthew, somewhat dazed, glanced out the window. Matthew was a transmigrator, having been playing a game called Arcane Emperor before his transmigration. The kingdom he established was under siege by the gods, on the brink of collapse. In his final despair, he activated the destruction spell, bringing down the most hateful death god Yeg, the great evil god Lathander, and the goddess of fate Taji along with it. Depressed, Matthew, at the moment of his kingdom's destruction, thought he would enter the character creation screen for a new game, but instead, he found himself transmigrated into the world of Arcane Emperor, becoming Matthew Ser. Matthew acquired Matthew Ser's memories, only to discover that the reason he was reborn in this body was that it had once died. Poisoned to death. In his soul state, Matthew Ser, unwilling to accept the fate of an early death, used a mysterious magical artifact to pray to the River of Fate, seeking a second chance. Fate played a joke on him. Matthew Ser got his second chance, but at the cost of his soul. Over the next few days, Matthew came to terms with his transmigration to this world, continuously absorbing memories to ensure he wouldn't reveal any flaws. Because this was a dangerous world filled with spells, dragons, elves, dwarves, gods, and other fantastical beings. Possession by evil spirits or soul usurpation was not uncommon, and even slightly higher-level spellcasters or priests could detect that Matthew's soul was foreign. Therefore, he had to be extremely careful. Of course, there was another, more important reason why Matthew had been hiding in the carriage these days: to protect his own life, to prevent himself from committing suicide again. Fortunately, the inside of this carriage was equipped with spatial magic, accommodating a resting bedroom with all necessary facilities, allowing Matthew to live comfortably within. It was only today that Matthew successfully absorbed all the memories and fully merged with this body. At the same time, Matthew also gained control of the inheritance left by his predecessor. Matthew Ser was 18 years old this year. His father was Count Ser, Andrei Ser, an 18th level near-legendary arcanist. His mother was from the Eastern Empire, and after giving birth to Matthew, she returned to the Eastern continent. Matthew Ser was originally extraordinarily gifted. At the age of 2, he could already cast minor spells. At 6, he became a first-level arcanist. He was a super genius on par with Karl Sass of the Karl family. Matthew Ser should have, like Karl Sass, become one of the most powerful beings in the Netheril Empire, the great arcanist. However, just a month after Matthew Ser's genius reputation spread, a bizarre attack severely damaged Matthew Ser's soul, depriving him of the opportunity to advance in his profession. Before he could soar to the skies, he had already fallen into obscurity. In the days that followed, Matthew Ser and the Ser family tried everything, using all means to heal the soul injury, but all efforts failed. Gradually, Matthew Ser lost the full support of his family, becoming the eternal first-level arcanist. Disheartened, he grew up in mediocrity until he was 18. He should have spent his life under the protection of his family, with his greatest contribution being the production of a few bloodline heirs. Just when Matthew Ser had lost all hope, a mysterious figure approached him. The mysterious person claimed they could heal Matthew Ser's soul and even demonstrated by curing a soul-wounded professional, restoring their sanity and giving them hope to advance again. Naturally, Matthew Serre could not refuse such help and unhesitatingly followed the person's guidance to become a pioneering lord. The reason Matthew Serre gave to the outside world was to contribute to the Serre family's pioneering efforts and to try another path. Having endured countless praises and mockery, Matthew Serre left the family with unspeakable hope and the ridicule of others. He was to travel several hundred kilometers eastward to the agreed territory with the mysterious person, Bay Village. There, Matthew Serre thought he would embrace a new life, but the mysterious person who had been following him suddenly disappeared. The next night, Matthew Serre was poisoned to death, with a half-drunk bottle of poison beside him and a very thoughtfully written suicide note. The poisoner was so meticulous that even the handwriting was almost indistinguishable from the real thing, leaving the awakened Matthew utterly shocked. Matthew had spent decades in Arcane Emperor. He had grown from an ordinary mage to a 39th level great arcanist ruling over a magical kingdom with vast experience and knowledge. He had defeated countless powerful enemies, hunted dragons, slaughtered demons, defeated demigod liches, and even brought gods down with him. He knew and mastered various resurrection methods, but none were as bizarre as what Matthew Serre had experienced. He smelled something very familiar. The scent of conspiracy. Who wants me dead? It definitely can't be the other heirs of the family because while they're stupid, they're not foolish enough to target someone as non-threatening as me, nor should it be the mysterious person's accomplices. Based on the abilities shown in the memories, the person must be at least a high-level professional, and there's no need for them to go through such trouble to kill me. Could it be that the person who wants me dead is related to the attacker from when I was 6? And they've arranged everything so perfectly. Even more considerate than a son? Over the past few days, Matthew had been carefully pondering and secretly observing everyone in the caravan, identifying some suspicious individuals but ultimately ruling them out as threats. Crack came a sound, then a mule's neigh echoed. Matthew snapped out of his thoughts, gripping his staff, then slowly relaxing his hold as a cold glint flashed in his dark eyes. Oh, it's happening again? It seems the other side is already growing impatient. Since they haven't chosen to attack outright, it means they must have some reservations, which means I still have a chance to survive. The unknown danger and dire situation did not crush Matthew. Instead, it gave him a sense of the thrill of returning to a fierce battle. Come on, let me see who wants to kill me, and who will be whose prey. Outside, the cart pushers cursed inwardly, stopping in their tracks as they anxiously looked over. Sure enough, a bad situation had occurred. One of the cart's wheels had sunk into a mud pit, nearly toppling the mule that was dragging it. Fortunately, the cargo was tightly secured and did not fall onto the muddy road. No one wanted to taste mud-scented black bread again. What are you standing there for? Quickly bring some stones to fill it, then spread a layer of gravel, and finally tamp it down with the millstone. Don't even think about slacking off, old John. Where did you go? Hurry up and take a look, mister. Ralph, the steward, was very displeased and immediately began directing the repairs. Old John patted the mule's neck, smoothed its mane, and calmed the long-neighing mule. Once the large stones were placed in the pit, followed by some smaller ones, old John directed a few young men to lift the wheel using levers from the cart's side. At the same time, he tugged the mule's reins, using its strength to pull the cart out of the mud pit. The steward, Ralph, anxiously glanced at the sky and spoke to old John in an impatient tone. You'd better be careful. If there's another problem on the road, forget about lunch. Bending down for a closer look, the wrinkles on old John's face deepened, and after shaking his head, he said, "The axle is cracked. It'll need to be repaired before we can move on. It'll take about 2 hours. 2 hours. Then we won't make it to Sweetwater Town by noon." That's not acceptable. Ralph shook his head hurriedly, displeased. He bent down to inspect the crack in the axle, clenched his teeth, and walked towards the carriage in the center of the convoy. Stewart suppressed his nervous thoughts, gently knocked on the door, and whispered, "Master Matthew, the cart ahead has some issues and needs 2 hours of repair. Should we continue to Sweetwater Town so that we can arrive by noon and have lunch with Baron Carlyle?" Matthew was just about to open the door when a flash of light appeared in his vision, and a familiar interface popped up in front of him. Activate the choice of fate. Choose to leave, Misfortune 5. Choose to stay, Fortune 4. A slow-paced farming novel. A brand new story of an arcanist. Chapter 2, Sweetwater Town, it's over. Chapter 2, Sweetwater Town, it's over. What is this? My cheat ability? Or a player attribute interface? After a brief moment of thought, Matthew temporarily set the question aside. Things he couldn't figure out could be left for later. The choice in front of him was the real priority. Leaving here to go to Sweetwater Town with such a high misfortune level? A value of 5, that's a catastrophic event with a 100% fatality rate. Is there an ambush on the road ahead? Or is there danger in the meeting with Baron Carlyle? In Matthew's memory, the adventure level of the Misty Swamp wasn't that high, considered a beginner area. Many new players would venture in this region. Of course, the real world would certainly differ from the game, but it wouldn't be too far off. Unless thousands of murlocs appeared all at once, or a swamp giant croc leader of level 10 or higher charged head-on, only then would there be a risk of total annihilation for a team of over 100 people and 10 professional soldiers. But those creatures would make a lot of noise, and they could be spotted and avoided from a distance. Choosing to stay would only delay us by 2 hours at most. Fortune 4 is secondary. What's important is that I can stay alive. Recognizing his own strength, Matthew chose according to his instincts. After opening the door, he calmly said, "No need to rush, let's fix the cart first. Everyone else should rest for a while too. We've been traveling for so many days and are almost at our destination, so there's no need to be in such a hurry." The calm tone, devoid of the usual urgency, left the steward Ralph slightly stunned. As he looked at Matthew, who was smiling faintly, he suddenly felt as if the young master has grown up. Bowing slightly, he nodded in agreement. "As you command." Ralph turned around, made a rest gesture to the others, and shouted in a loud voice, "The Lord has ordered everyone to rest. Old John, you keep working, the rest of you check the cargo and replenish your strength. We're about to reach our destination. Your hard work will not be in vain. The promised land and a good life will definitely be fulfilled." The words, calm with a touch of encouragement, brought faint smiles to the faces of those around. With hope for a better life in the future, they felt that the hardships and dangers along the way were no longer significant. Watching this scene, Matthew glanced at the old steward Ralph in surprise. Whether in handling affairs, arranging personnel, controlling the situation, or adjusting the atmosphere, this steward performed outstandingly. More importantly, the special effects Ralph displayed through his words clearly indicated that he was also a professional. He must be a level 3 steward, such wealth in a noble family. If there's no threat of death, this start isn't bad at all. This made Matthew breathe a little easier. He didn't mind leading the team alone, but having helpers would save him more energy to deal with real threats. Thinking this, Matthew began to observe the others. There were about 100 young men, the base team arranged by the family to accompany them to the territory. Most of them were slaves purchased by the Ser family, most of whom had undergone some military training. Before coming, they were promised that if they contributed or worked for 5 years, they would gain the status of freemen. Among them were also freemen from the original territory, some skilled in 1 or 2 crafts, hoping to gain land of their own or a different life in the new territory. Aside from these people, what Matthew valued most, apart from the 10 soldiers guarding the carriage, was naturally the knight at the end of the team. Ralph waded through the mud, inspecting the team, and softly said to the knight on the horse, "Angela, you've worked hard, take a rest." Skillfully raising her visor and wiping away the beads of sweat on her forehead, Angela flashed a sweet smile. "It's not hard at all. Training is much more exhausting than this." Although she said this, Angela, mindful of preserving the horse's strength, lightly jumped off the horse. Her silver-white steel armor seemed as light as a feather. Angela stroked her beloved horse's mane, handed it some specially prepared fodder which included a fresh egg, and finally fed it a pinch of salt, taking great care of it. Matthew noticed Angela's slightly pointed ears. This beautiful young knight clearly had elven blood. A knight professional so young with great potential. If properly nurtured, she might even lead a knight order. Matthew recalled his former Wyvern Knight Order and secretly made up his mind. He must establish a powerful Arcane empire. Humanity's fate should be in its own hands. Matthew didn't notice that Angela felt his gaze, causing the young knight's ears to blush slightly. An hour and a half later, old John had repaired the axle, and the team started moving again. Matthew kept a close watch on the surroundings but saw no danger. Even the murlocs that usually hid in the muddy pits and jumped out were nowhere to be seen. After the prompt flashed, there had been no further activity, making Matthew begin to doubt its reliability. Another hour passed. The caravan had arrived near Sweetwater Town, and as Matthew looked at the town looming in the distance, he subconsciously raised an eyebrow. "Are you messing with me? Where's the promised luck?" Roar! A deafening roar suddenly echoed from afar. The sound carried immense pressure, accompanied by a certain majesty that sent shivers down the spine. A dragon? Matthew immediately turned his head to see a massive black figure unfurling its wings, whipping up a fierce wind as it soared into the clouds. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the clouds, out of everyone's sight. The massive body, nearly 18 meters long, confirmed that what had just flown past Matthew was an adult black dragon, a level 17+ leader, a super creature with a high chance of becoming legendary. The terrifying wind and pressure instantly threw the resting people into chaos. Many panicked and fell into the mud pits, their hearts pounding wildly. The mules pulling the carts collapsed in fear, trembling and crying out in terror as they lay on the ground. But it wasn't over yet. A roaring cry echoed through the clouds as the black dragon's massive, majestic figure dove toward the ground. Matthew's pupils contracted as he saw the ferocious gleam in the black beast's eyes. Countless players had fallen to this terrifying attack before. It had a resounding nickname, Deep Breath. The dark green corrosive breath descended as the black dragon charged forward, turning the ground below into a hellish inferno of destruction. Standing next to Matthew, Ralph watched the black dragon disappear into the billowing black smoke and trembled as he pointed into the distance, muttering to himself, "Sweetwater Town, it's over." Regular updates at 8 a.m. Chapter 3, Luck is Becoming a Father. Chapter 3, Luck is Becoming a Father. Chapter 3, Luck is Becoming a Father. The terrifying black smoke shot straight into the sky. Matthew stood in place, watching the distant collapsing walls and the gradually spreading pungent smell, his heart sinking slightly. The people of Sweetwater Town are done for. Even if they weren't killed by the breath directly, the corrosive gas spreading out will burn through their lungs. This is the living world, where you never know if surprises or disasters will come first. Not thinking about the black dragon that had disappeared into the distance, Matthew closed his eyes, did some mental fortification, then turned to look at the people in a dazed state, and Dee shouted in a low voice, "Let's go, we need to take a detour. The poison gas is coming soon. Leave everything behind. We can come back after the gas disperses. You also tear off some cloth, make scarves, soak them in water, and cover your mouth and nose. Hurry to the nearest high ground." Before the dazed people could react, the old steward Ralph had already slapped old John on the head and shouted loudly, "Did you hear that? Hurry and do as the Lord says, it will save your lives." As he shouted, Ralph pulled out the dagger from his waist and quickly stabbed it into a cloth bag, pulling out over 10 pieces of linen clothing. Angela, who had rushed over, drew her sword and with a few swift cuts, split them open and threw them into a bucket of water. Under the threat of death, the panicked crowd who had surged forward was forced back by Angela's raised sword, and Ralph sternly scolded, "Line up. We have time. If anyone tries to push, I'll break their legs." Whether it was Ralph's long-standing authority and fairness or Angela's gleaming sword that worked, after the initial chaos, everyone obediently lined up and followed Ralph's instructions to run towards the distant hillside. Ralph tied the remaining wet cloth around the mules, who were collapsed on the ground, unable to stand inside. What a disaster out of nowhere! Locking the door behind him, Matthew got off the carriage and with Angela's pull quickly ran into the distance. Matthew felt the frailty of his body and a hint of helplessness flashed through his mind as he secretly made up his mind. This weak body won't do, strengthening and modification must be prioritized. After running to the small hillside, everyone panted heavily, turning to look back. A thin mist blew in with the wind, and wherever it passed, the lush green plants quickly withered. The area where the caravan had been was also shrouded in grayish-white mist, and the mules left behind soon let out painful whinnies. Ralph's face was full of distress. These were the Lord's property, and it was his duty to protect them. If these mules died and the supply town Sweetwater Town was devastated, the supplies would have to be moved by human power, which would disrupt the planned itinerary. Spending the night outdoors with the blood moon approaching was an extremely dangerous thing. Matthew was still unaware of everyone's worries. He was now feeling deeply afraid. Fortunately, we were delayed by 2 hours. If we had already entered Sweetwater Town, I probably would have died before even starting my mission. This is what Misfortune 5 brings. A 100% death rate is no joke. But the death crisis is avoided and the Luck 4 reward hasn't been fulfilled yet. Subconsciously rubbing his temples, Matthew sarcastically reflected to himself. Ralph, thinking his lord was worried about the situation, quickly comforted him. "Lord, you don't need to worry. A creature of the Black Dragon's level appearing and attacking a town would surely draw the attention of our monitoring spell arrays. That's probably why the Black Dragon fled. With the current power of the Netheril Empire, the great arcanists with an average level over 25 would be very happy to capture this troublemaking black dragon. Whether to bleed it for farming or to use it for spell experiments, both are very satisfying methods." Just then, a flash of azure light streaked through the sky, and Matthew immediately recognized its origin. Teleportation wave! As the teleportation array's fluctuations settled, a red figure fell straight to the ground. A pale face with a chest corroded by acid, leaving a gaping bloody hole. No need to check, they're dead. But with his keen observation, Matthew noticed the bald head and the iconic red robe on the body. Sure enough, it's those mad red robe mages. What were they thinking, provoking a black dragon? Now they've lost their lives and taken a town down with them. Well versed in such matters, Matthew immediately recognized the origin and knew that these mages from the kingdom of Thay were nothing but madmen and zealots. Just as Matthew was pondering what the red-robe mages had done to provoke the black dragon, a black, oval object landed in front of Matthew, making a creaking sound. It was a large, jet-black iron egg with faint dark green corrosion marks on its surface, emitting wisps of black smoke. Clearly, it had been heavily damaged in the black dragon's breath attack. Matthew blinked in confusion at the heavily damaged dragon egg before him, then noticed that cracks were forming on the dark eggshell. A slightly flattened dark head poked out from the crack, followed by two chubby claws and then the whole body. It was only then that Matthew got a clear look at the little creature. A flat, broad little head with 3 blunt horns on it, a back covered in dark, shiny scales with a slightly yellowish belly and limbs. Only its delicate wings bore hints of charred black and small holes, clearly where the wounds were. Matthew felt like he was looking at a magical version of a black-backed dog, completely unlike the dragon whelps he had seen before. After struggling out of the shell, the little creature seemed exceptionally weak, lying on the ground unable to stand. Its round, chubby body trembled, and its life force was gradually fading. The little thing had clearly been seriously injured in the earlier attack, and without immediate treatment, it might not even get to see the beautiful world before it dies. A wild and unbelievable thought suddenly arose in Matthew's mind. Could this heavily injured dragon whelp be the manifestation of luck for? Hiss, if that's the case, then I misunderstood luck earlier. Please forgive my short-sightedness. Without time to savor the irony, Matthew quickly exchanged a glance with Ralph, who, with eyes gleaming in excitement, replied in an incredulous tone, "Lord, this is destiny. Quickly use the life pact, not only to save this dragon whelp but also to heal your soul's damage." Surprised, Matthew glanced at the steward, able to hear the sincere concern in his voice without any ulterior motives, and gave him a nod of approval. "You're really something, steward." Without hesitation, Matthew took out the only item left by his mother, the life pact, rumored to be made from the leaves of the world tree. The life pact allows any two creatures to form a life bond, sharing life and longevity, while also compensating for each other's weaknesses, even repairing fatal injuries. Matthew had previously considered using the life pact to form a bond with a transcendent creature. But weak creatures wouldn't have any effect, and the Ser family had no means to obtain super creatures that could become legendary. So the life pact had been kept unused. Now, with it finally coming into play, Matthew, even in his second life, never expected such a surprising start. He squatted down and gently stroked the trembling black dragon whelp, vaguely sensing its desire to survive. "Form a pact with me. If you don't say anything, I'll take that as a yes." The life pact, translucent and emerald-like, seemed to sense Matthew and the whelp's thoughts, transforming into glowing particles that merged into their bodies. Matthew could clearly feel an indescribable gentle power spreading through his body, with his originally weak physique rapidly growing stronger before his eyes. To his astonishment, a curious and childish voice suddenly echoed in his mind. "Yeah. Are you daddy? Internal reviews are done, so feel free to invest. 100,000 words already written. Please bookmark, recommend, and follow the story. Following the story is really important for a new book. If you find it interesting, please check it out every day." Chapter 4, The Real Dragon Daddy has arrived. Chapter 4, The Real Dragon Daddy has arrived. Greg. Watching the sudden appearance of his daughter, the dragon whelp, munching away on the metallic-looking eggshell, Matthew could clearly feel the little creature's body growing at an astonishing rate. As expected, this behavior is like how most mammals in my previous life would eat their own placenta. It's a successful strategy for super creatures like dragons. In no time, the little one had finished eating the entire eggshell. Compared to its initial soft appearance, the creature's skin and scales had become firm and resilient. It let out a contented burp, its sapphire-like eyes gleaming, and its round baby teeth gave it an incredibly cute and endearing look. Patting the adorable little creature, Matthew tried to communicate with it through telepathy. "What's your true name?" "Yeah. Daddy, what's a true name? Can you eat it?" The cute little thing affectionately crawled to Matthew's feet, lifted its head, and rubbed its tiny belly against his leg, responding with a clear foodie vibe. Seeing its not-so-bright demeanor, Matthew felt a twinge of concern but then thought somewhat strangely, "This isn't such a big deal. Raising this little one should be fine, though she might eat a lot in the future." After making up his mind, Matthew gently picked her up. The soft little body weighed about 10 pounds, like a large plush toy. The little one was very fond of Matthew, letting out a few happy sounds before burying her head in his chest and falling asleep within seconds. A different kind of feeling welled up in Matthew's heart as he gently stroked the little one's head, suddenly realizing how quiet it had become around him. There were no exclamations from others, no alerts from Ralph or Angela, and even the faint sound of the wind and the chirping of insects had disappeared. "What's going on? Matthew turned to look around and found everyone frozen like statues, not moving an inch. Even the mist floating in the air had halted in place. A feeling of indescribable horror surged in his heart. As a former great arcanist who loved manipulating time and space, known as the Child of Time and Space, Matthew instinctively recognized this legendary spell, 9-ring time stop. What impressed Matthew the most was the caster's precision in controlling the spell, isolating only himself from its effects. The caster's spell level was at least 25 plus. High-level legendary. They have another title, demigod. With that realization, Matthew relaxed his mental guard. If the other party truly wanted to kill him, it would be no harder than squashing an ant. There was no need for such a convoluted approach. I'm weak, I'll lie down, no panic at all. Scanning his surroundings, there was no movement. He looked behind him, but nothing stirred. There was only one possibility left. Matthew gently patted the soundly sleeping little creature, calmly raised his head and met a pair of enormous vertical pupils. In the silver-gray eyes, Matthew's calm face was reflected, absorbing all the dragon's terrifying aura. Yet seeing such a super creature up close still left one awestruck. Outside the massive, over 2-meter-wide eye, deep gray-black scales shimmered like a mask, covering its majestic and formidable face. Huge dragon horns curved backward, with turbulent, twisted waves of power hidden within, resembling a giant crown. 12 black scales arranged in a circular pattern grew unevenly on its body, absorbing even the gaze, as if devouring all the surrounding time. Triangular wings like heaven-reaching wings stretched back, making the entire body look like a giant funnel, recording time. A fearsome, sharp giant claw slowly clenched in midair, an indescribable transparent wave enveloping the area, isolating it from the surroundings. Time under complete control. This was a legendary dragon, a time dragon. In the face of the colossal supergiant body, Matthew looked as small as a mouse. Matthew found it hard to believe. Even with decades of experience in his previous life's game, he had never seen such a powerful legendary creature as a time dragon in person. Only some players who ventured into space found traces of a time dragon's existence in star regions with god corpses. This supergiant time dragon, over 50 meters in size, was at least 400 years old, with a larger body and greater strength than other dragons. Matthew estimated that even Netheral's most powerful weapon, the floating city, could be easily dismantled by such a terrifying creature. Thinking it over, Matthew cursed the inexplicable luck choice in his heart while smiling and gently lifted the little creature sleeping in his arms, asking in a calm voice, "Mighty time dragon, is this little one your offspring?" "Indeed, though she is not a true dragon, she is indeed my offspring." A voice filled with majesty and a hint of gravitas echoed in Matthew's mind. "Well, I was just mistaken for this little one's daddy, and now the real dragon daddy has shown up. If it's a good dragon, that's fine." "Wait, who am I kidding? Even if it's a good dragon, seeing its offspring sign a life pact with a human would make it furious. So this is luck 4. Okay, I get it. Meeting a legendary dragon as a first-level arcanist truly requires extraordinary luck." As if sensing something, the cute little one curiously opened her eyes but seemed to see nothing, tilting her head in confusion. In the silver-gray eyes of the time dragon, a hint of regret flashed as it raised another dragon claw, slowly extending it toward Matthew, with an invisible force enveloping the little one. The little one, feeling sleepy, let out a long yawn and snuggled back into Matthew's arms to continue sleeping. The previously damaged dragon wings restored themselves, returning to their original state. The little one noticed this, flapped her wings happily a couple of times, folded them back onto her back, and continued to sleep soundly. Just as Matthew was about to say something, he felt an invisible force pass through his body and the previously vanished text reappeared in his vision. "Fate's choice 2, hand over the little one, misfortune 4, keep the little one, luck 4. Wow. No matter what choice I make, there's deadly danger." Matthew didn't notice that the luck value had silently returned to 0 after the little one's transformation. He didn't have time to sense the changes in his body, as the second choice of fate forced him to rack his brain once again. First, if it wasn't for some urgent matter, or even a life-threatening danger. Matthew didn't believe that a high-level red robe mage with a profession level not exceeding 15 had the kind of unbelievable luck needed to steal a dragon egg from a legendary time dragon's nest. Wait, according to dragon-raising habits, dragon eggs are usually protected by female dragons, and the time dragon shouldn't be an exception. Whatever hidden entanglements and dangers lay behind this, Matthew quickly concluded that the legendary dragon that went to such great lengths to cast time stop to cover up the information must be in great danger. Moreover, the time dragon just mentioned that the little one is not a true dragon. Its attitude toward her definitely won't be as protective as toward a true dragon offspring. So, this might actually work. Matthew couldn't imagine the situation behind the whole incident, but without hesitation he decided to take the risk and said, Then, great legendary time dragon, my life is now bound to this little one. I will do my best to raise her so that she grows strong and happy. Slowly raising its dragon claw, the legendary time dragon Kronos showed a hint of curiosity in its eyes for the first time. It repeatedly examined Matthew's fearless eyes, sensing the subtle and obscure fluctuations within him, pondering for a moment, then slowly nodded. The pact is sealed. I will watch you through time. As the words fell, the enormous body of the time dragon Kronos silently vanished. Gone just like that? Feeling quite relieved, Matthew let out a long breath, gently patted the little one sleeping in his arms, and thinking of the time dragon's terrifying ability to appear and disappear. And the warning left behind, muttered with mixed emotions, well, I've just started and already caught the attention of a big shot. Wait, if the time dragon can always watch over me, does that mean the mysterious person or the forces behind my troubles won't have a chance? Could this be the true effect of Luck 4? So, what will the next Luck 4 bring? Plus 4,000 words added to the draft. Please bookmark, recommend, and follow. Also, following the story is really important. If you're interested, please check it out every day. Chapter 5 Run. Chapter 5 Run. Lord, these mules are still alive. This is great news. The food and clothing are also undamaged, but the axle we just repaired seems to have broken again. I'll have old John fix it right away. After inspecting the supplies they had left behind, Steward Ralph finally relaxed, a barely concealed smile on his lips. Angela also let out a sigh of relief, occasionally casting curious glances at the little creature sleeping soundly in Matthew's arms. Much cuter than the Earl's most cherished summoned creature, the Wind Serpent King. Yahem, forgive my disrespect. Standing before the body, Matthew noticed at least 3 or 4 valuable magical items. Whether kept for himself or sold through the right channels, they could significantly speed up the development of his territory. However, Matthew didn't dare to touch them. The hidden dangers of Luck plus 4 made Matthew too cautious to gamble. So he ignored the corpse, and to prevent others from getting any ideas, sternly instructed the still-shaken Angela. His death has nothing to do with us. No one is allowed to take anything from his body. Let's not invite unnecessary trouble. With the example of Luck 4 before him, Matthew was on high alert for the impending Misfortune 4. All he wanted was to safely reach his territory. Angela nodded, still shaken, and warily scanned the members of the convoy. She clearly remembered how some people's gazes turned odd when the Lord was forming a pact with the dragon whelp. I will become the Lord's sharpest sword and strongest shield, defending him from all dangers and malice and annihilating all his enemies. This was Angela's vow and her unwavering belief, because everything she had was given to her by the Lord. Matthew was naturally unaware of Angela's thoughts, and even if he knew, he had no time to discuss them with her. He was now looking solemnly into the distance, at the billowing smoke and the ruins of Sweetwater Town, now a living hell, and said resolutely, "Abandon the supplies, take only the mules. We must leave quickly, the Black Dragon could return at any moment." Steward Ralph nodded without hesitation and immediately began giving orders. Abandon the cargo in cart 3. Old John, replace the mules, let them rest for an hour, and then replace the weakest mule. Numbers 1 and 10, take up your weapons and shields, lead the way at the front of the convoy. The rest of the group from cart 3 take their positions. Watching the old steward expertly manage the situation, Matthew gently patted the little creature, nodding in approval. He returned to the carriage, noticing that the little one hadn't caused any discomfort to the mules, immediately realizing it was the time dragon's doing. I hope the dragon is okay. If this time dragon really has the time, it would be the best support and ally I could ask for. Thinking this, Matthew looked at the increasingly distant Sweetwater Town, imagining the tens of thousands who had died without resistance or struggle. Most of them probably didn't even know who killed them as death approached. An indescribable sense of crisis and anger surged in his heart, only to be buried deep inside, waiting for time to ferment and strength to grow. As the convoy passed by the ruins of Sweetwater Town, most of the others remained silent. Seeing the broken walls, the crumbling buildings, and the charred bones scattered around, it was hard not to feel a chilling fear. Glancing warily at the ruins, Matthew frowned in suspicion, vaguely sensing some dangerous eyes watching. There shouldn't be any life left in the ruins after the Black Dragon's corrosive breath. But whatever it was, Matthew had no desire to provoke it. He had no interest in the remains of Sweetwater Town either. The crisis in the back of his mind urged him to leave quickly, to run. Matthew acted as if nothing had happened, suppressing the sense of danger as he gently stroked the staff made from fire dragon wood. This was a gift from his father, Count Andre, when he was 6 years old, as a reward for becoming an arcanist. Spell enhancement Instant +1, daily casts of Fireball 3/3. It should have been just a childhood toy for Matthew Serre, a keepsake like a stuffed panda, but now it was the only magical item he had. The soft golden sunlight fell on Matthew's face, but the long-lost warmth brought him no comfort, failing to dispel the coldness in his heart. The ruins of Sweetwater Town gradually receded, until they disappeared beyond the horizon. Not long after the convoy left, a twisted spatial ripple appeared in the smoke-shrouded ruins of Sweetwater Town. The inexplicable pressure seemed to have vanished. Everyone felt an unexplainable relief, and the thoughts and words they had been holding in began to come out in light banter and conversation. In no time, the convoy was filled with the sound of quiet discussions. Smiles gradually appeared on everyone's faces, and they occasionally glanced at the little creature in the Lord's arms. The stronger the Lord becomes, the safer we are. You're right, as long as we follow the Lord, our future will be bright. When the Lord's dragon grows up, it will protect us and our descendants for hundreds of years. Who knows, we might even be able to expand our territory and we could become knights ourselves. Hey, you're dreaming. You think you could become a knight with that attitude? Why not? When our Lord becomes a duke, a merciful Lord like him won't forget my contributions. That little dragon seems to have grown a bit bigger. It's growing so fast. That's a legendary dragon after all. Most people won't see one in their entire life, let alone get this close. Come to think of it, thank goodness the Lord didn't rush into Sweetwater Town otherwise. Do you think we can boast about surviving a black dragon attack to others later? Haha, good point. All sorts of quiet voices reached Matthew's ears and his vision was getting sharper, his body and strength gradually increasing. Whether this sudden change had just begun or had been happening all along, only now accumulating to a noticeable level, Matthew didn't know. Matthew even felt that with each breath his body became stronger than before, and so did the little one in his arms. Matthew unconsciously became immersed in the feeling, unaware of the passing time. His contemplative expression caught Angela's eye, and to her it appeared incredibly charming. The sun was setting, the distant sky painted with red clouds. The dark green misty swamp gradually began to stir. The road beyond Sweetwater Town, due to a lack of regular maintenance, became increasingly difficult to traverse. Fortunately, after surviving the Black Dragon's attack, everyone was more resilient to such things. Having crossed the threshold between life and death, these minor issues seemed insignificant. Steward Ralph hesitated, licking his lips before carefully studying the map. The wrinkles on his forehead deepened as he seemed to make up his mind, gently tapping the map with his finger. Then Ralph put the map away and quickly walked over to Matthew, reluctantly interrupting the Lord's thoughts. Lord, our original plan was to rest for the night in Sweetwater Town and get through tonight's Scarlet Moon. At our current pace, we will reach a military outpost in about 30 minutes around 5 p.m. Normally, a 10-man garrison would be stationed there, and under normal circumstances, we could rely on the outpost's tower and walls to safely get through the Scarlet Moon. However, if there are too many mutated creatures in the wild, there's a risk of the entire outpost being overrun. If we only rest for half an hour at the outpost, we could reach the territory around 9 p.m. But before that, we would have to endure 2 hours under the Scarlet Moon's light, a very dangerous time. Matthew snapped out of his thoughts, focusing on Ralph's hesitant face, and saw the familiar blue light flash in his vision once again. He expected another fate choice, but it was something entirely different. Instead, the long-lost character attribute panel appeared. Just a glance was enough to make Matthew's eyes widen in disbelief as he exclaimed, "What the hell? Are these the stats of a first-level Arcanist?" Second chapter of the day. Please bookmark, recommend, and follow. Chapter 6, A Proactive Choice. Chapter 6. A proactive choice. Matthew Serre, race human. Age 17 years and 9 months. Profession level 1 Arcanist 1/1000. Experience pool 0. Talents Dragon Bloodline LV1. Feats Legendary feat Fate's Choice. Passive Insight into the essence of most things, presented in the most familiar form. Active Consume 100 Fate coins to activate Fate's Choice, where misfortune accompanies opportunity and danger is hidden within fortune. Fate coins 108. Spell skills Cantrips LV5 Minor Repair Detect Magic Light Ray of Frost Clean Mage Hand Magic Fireworks Wither Flower Cook Food. Level 1 spells cost 10 mana points. Magic Missile LV3 releases 3+3 magically constructed missiles, each dealing 3 points of magic damage to the enemy. Sleep LV4 casts sleep with a will save of 3+4. The target falls asleep, waking upon taking any damage. Rapid Fireball LV4 sequentially releases 4 small fireballs, each dealing 2 points of damage. Attributes: Strength 12 modifier plus 1 dexterity 14 modifier plus 2 intelligence 24 modifier plus 7 constitution 15 modifier plus 2 wisdom 18 modifier plus 4 charisma 16 modifier plus 3 luck plus 4 temporary spell attack 5 physical attack 3 defense 2 hit points 31/31 constitution x2 plus profession level light injury mana points 250/250 intelligence x10 plus profession level x10 skills knowledge 198 near legendary, meditation 158 near legendary, perception 106 advanced, deception 105 advanced, leadership 101 advanced, evasion 86 intermediate, persuasion 75 intermediate. Life contract time dragon beast. Evaluation, a boss in normal development. An arcanist truly lives up to its name as an advanced profession, and Matthew Serre's talent does indeed qualify as a super genius. The sum of his 6 main attributes reaches 99 points, even higher than my total attributes as a level 39 great arcanist. In Matthew's memory, the maximum attribute for an ordinary player cannot exceed 18 points with a total attribute value of only 60 points. The game Arcane Emperor is different from other games. Players can only increase their attributes by 1 or 2 points through leveling up every 4 levels, or by advancing their profession and completing certain critical rituals. Just like me, as a level 39 great arcanist who's standing at the pinnacle of player power, my total attributes are still lower than those of a level 1 Matthew Serre. Indeed, only games consider balance. Reality only considers domination. No wonder Matthew Serre was a super genius who could rival Karsa's in talent. But Matthew quickly snapped out of his thoughts and noticing Ralph's hesitant gaze instinctively asked, "Wait, the Scarlet Moon. Aberration monsters?" Seeing Ralph nod solemnly, Matthew's heart surged with turmoil as countless bloody and painful memories flooded back. The Scarlet Moon, seemingly a terrifying presence from the realm of evil gods. Every evening, the blood-red moon would cast twisted and terrifying light. All creatures exposed to it had a chance to undergo aberrations. It starts with physical changes. Aberrant creatures would grow extra limbs, organs, and their structures would quickly alter. This process lasts from 0 to 7 days. Soon after, once the physical changes are complete, the dark side of their personality would grow uncontrollably, penetrating deep into their minds. Once this stage is reached, the creature's sanity rapidly fades, replaced by bloodlust and a craving for slaughter. This process lasts for months. Most aberrant creatures reveal themselves through wanton killing and die during this stage. Only a few aberrant creatures, after devouring enough flesh and souls, undergo aberrations deep within their souls. Once the soul aberration is complete, they regain their sanity but become loyal followers of the Scarlet Moon. From then on, their lives and time are dedicated to spreading the Scarlet Moon's influence, creating more aberrant worlds. For thousands of years, the Scarlet Moon has influenced the entire material plane with its terrifying and twisted power. Matthew Serre's memories contained much hidden knowledge about the Scarlet Moon and information about aberrant creatures that even Matthew had not known. Every full moon brought the danger of aberrations that affected the entire material plane. But in Matthew's memories from his past life, it was completely different. Players entered Arcane Emperor on this very night. While they occasionally encountered strange aberrant creatures and adventures, players were usually the ones getting killed. But the large-scale Scarlet Moon events didn't happen until 20 years later. Matthew had previously thought that the appearance of the Scarlet Moon events was just the release of a new expansion, increasing the game's difficulty. But now it seemed things were not as they appeared. There was a deeper secret at play here. Wow, after living here for decades, I never realized there were so many secrets hidden. The game developers and the company really misled me. Though Matthew said this to himself, he quickly calmed down. He knew very well how terrifying the Scarlet Moon and the aberrant creatures were. Under the Scarlet Moon, the average adventure level in the wild would reach a staggering 7+, and it would require a team. The average level of aberrant creatures also reached 4, and as the game progressed, legendary level aberrant creatures even appeared. These creatures, nearly impossible to kill like demigods, caused many catastrophic and terrifying attacks. Suppressing his unease and searching his memories, Matthew could now confirm that while the current blood moon was dangerous, it was far less terrifying than it would be 20 years later. Thinking of the temporary luck 4 mark on him, Matthew licked his lips and chose a possibly more dangerous path. Let's get to the outpost quickly, eat and rest immediately, then continue on the road to avoid any unexpected developments. Ralph agreed with Matthew's decision, feeling that today had been too strange and they couldn't remain passive, and trusting their safety to mere hope. After all, compared to the isolated outpost in the misty swamp, a village with about 2,000 people and dozens of soldiers was much safer. This decision wasn't hidden from the others. Ralph encouraged them as he spoke. Everyone hang in there, we're almost there and then we'll be safe. Prepare for any potential danger. Any object approaching without warning should be first warned, then attacked. The group moved with more urgency, as for most of them today had been an incredibly thrilling day. But it was too thrilling. Now, all they wanted was to get through it safely. The sun gradually approached the horizon. The red light penetrated the mist. The dark green misty swamp was tinged with dark red, giving it a desolate and bleak sense of unease. The convoy arrived at the outpost at 4:40. They were 20 minutes early. Ralph had the Set family banner raised and led a few soldiers inside to negotiate. Matthew could vaguely hear that it was quiet inside, feeling a bit surprised. The other side's reactions suggested they were unaware of Sweetwater Town's fate this afternoon. Ralph returned, confirming Matthew's guess, bringing back 2 anxious soldiers. "This is our lord, and this is Captain Sean of Outpost 16. Captain Sean has agreed to let us rest and eat here, but he has a small request." Matthew noticed Angela standing alertly in front of him, appreciating the knight's vigilance, as he calmly focused his gaze on the anxious Captain Sean. As expected, Ralph is very shrewd, not revealing the situation in Sweetwater Town. Given that, unlike other transmigrators who might eagerly seek allies, Matthew instead maintained a distant and indifferent demeanor. "Just say what it is. Whether I agree or not is another matter." Captain Sean, whose face bore a scar, saw the Ser family crest on Matthew's chest, a hint of excitement flashing in his eyes. He slightly bowed his head and spoke in a soft, pleading tone. "Honorable Lord, the soldiers of our outpost are all villagers from Bay Village. We heard that a dangerous beast appeared in the village yesterday and were worried about our family's safety. But we are bound by duty and cannot leave easily. Only you, my lord, have the authority. Please take us back to the village. Once we deal with the dangerous beast, we will return to the outpost as soon as possible." Chapter 7, Child of Destiny. Chapter 7, Child of Destiny. Matthew was slightly startled upon hearing this news, and immediately information about Bay Village and the various dangerous creatures in the surrounding area flashed through his mind. Another dragon? It shouldn't be, otherwise the whole village would likely be gone by now. Could it be a shadow panther or an earthquake bear? No, that doesn't seem right. Their habitats are too far from the village, and they are incredibly strong. If they had attacked, dozens or even hundreds would have been dead by now, and the soldiers at the outpost would have rushed back without hesitation. It's probably a mid-tier magical beast, and it's likely either alone or with its young. As Matthew was pondering, a clear and melodious voice suddenly rang in his ears, shocking him. Ding, Fate's choice detected. Would you like to spend 100 Fate coins to activate? Glancing at the 108 Fate coins he had left, Matthew didn't hesitate much and decisively chose to activate it. A trump card is meant to be used. Ding, activating Fate's choice 3. Will you lead the outpost soldiers back to Bay Village, Misfortune 3, or refuse to lead the outpost soldiers back to Bay Village, Fortune 5? To Matthew's surprise, he couldn't believe that the option to refuse had a terrifying Fortune 5 value. With the appearance of the first 2 Fates choices, Matthew had come to understand that misfortune or fortune didn't necessarily represent absolute bad luck or good luck. Instead, the higher the value, the deeper the involvement and the greater the danger. Last time, with a value of 5, Matthew encountered an adult black dragon and a legendary time dragon. The second time, with Fortune 4, Matthew might have provoked the Red Robe Mage Association and some hidden, enormous danger. If anything had gone wrong, Matthew would likely have ended up like those who perished in Sweetwater Town, eternally resting in the misty swamp. Not understanding the dangers of Fortune 5, Matthew thought it over and chose Misfortune 3 instead, following his instincts. This was Matthew's first time choosing a misfortune option, and although the value was high, he was ready to give it a try. Sure enough, after choosing Misfortune 3, his luck on the attribute panel dropped to -3. A faint sense of danger began to linger in his mind. Matthew calmed his mind, setting aside distractions, and carefully started thinking about the practical issues. With the Scarlet Moon approaching, they were sure to encounter aberrant creatures on the way to the territory. Although the soldiers at the outpost weren't well equipped, their overall strength was still decent. With their addition, the convoy's combat power would be significantly boosted. Moreover, Matthew had begun to form more theories about Fate's choice. The decisions of Misfortune and Fortune would likely provide him with more detailed information after this choice. Still, Matthew displayed the expected reaction of a noble in this world. He showed a slight hint of impatience on his face, glanced indifferently at Captain Sean, nodded casually, and waved his hand. So, there's trouble in the village too? Got it. Take everyone and all weapons and leave with us soon, but you must follow orders or else. He didn't finish the sentence but instead sneered, closing the door with a wave, putting on a front of annoyance to hide the shock on his face. Sean, race human, age 31, status captain of outpost 16 in the Misty Swamp, profession level 4 warrior, skills luck -3. Leon, race human, age 17, status soldier of outpost 16 in the Misty Swamp, profession level 1 warrior, skills /LV2 sweep LV2 white wolf swordsmanship LV1 luck +5. Matt W. didn't care much about Captain Sean's attributes. After all, a low-level warrior at 30 years old wouldn't have much potential or heritage. But Leon was a completely different story. White wolf swordsmanship and luck +5 instantly marked him as extraordinary. The former, in Matthew's memory, was an ancient and precious top-tier swordsmanship technique. 10 years from now, it would be made famous by the demon hunters of the White Wolf lineage, who gained renown for slaying numerous high-level demons, certainly not something a commoner could learn. Luck +5 shocked Matthew even more. He had gained a temporary luck +4 buff from his encounter with the Black Dragon and Time Dragon, and from forming a life contract with the Little One. Leon's luck +5 was clearly inherent. Matthew was so sure because he recognized Leon. In the future, Leon would become a legendary demon hunter, showcasing formidable combat prowess by single-handedly defeating a Balrog during a ruin exploration. This incredible feat was even captured by players, earning him countless fans, both male and female. Though Leon was not yet as hardened as he would be 20 years later, Matthew could see a striking resemblance, confirming his identity. It seems that luck is likely tied to the achievements and strength the person will attain in the future. Just like in many heroic biographies, where the protagonists continuously encounter fortunate events, rapidly gaining strength and always escaping danger, this must be related to their luck value. So, if I had chosen to refuse, I might have triggered a plot involving Leon. In some ways, Leon could also be considered a child of destiny. If I tried to kill him now, I'd probably fail due to some unforeseen event, and instead, I'd become one of those unlucky Elaine templates. Pondering this familiar name, Matthew couldn't help but compare him to the protagonist of a certain game called 3 Light, and a faint smile tugged at his lips. Well then, let's see what surprises meeting a child of destiny brings me. The crackling fire burned the slightly damp wood, producing a sizzle hiss sound. The sticky porridge kept bubbling, its sweet aroma making the exhausted group constantly swallow. The Lord has ordered, add half a pound of dried meat to each pot, finely chop it and cook it together. Old John worked quickly, slicing the reddish-brown jerky into small cubes with his sharp knife and evenly sprinkling them into the pot, stirring it skillfully. Sitting beside him, Leon twitched his nose slightly, his eyes full of surprise, and asked curiously, "Is the Lord always this generous? Do we get meat with every meal? Will we get enough to eat?" Thick smoke, tinged with a pungent smell, kept rising from the sides of the iron pot. Everyone skillfully avoided this area, placing the prepared black bread into the pot. The black bread, hard enough to break teeth, was something old John liked to cook until it was soft, mixing it with the porridge so that it remained slightly chewy with a faint malt flavor. Carefully chewing it, one could even taste a hint of sweetness. Of course, given the rush today with meat added to the mix, old John ate heartily, smiling as he nodded in response to Leon's question. Our Lord is a good man, not one for many words or much fuss, a top-notch noble really. Though the steward can be a bit harsh sometimes, he's incredibly capable. Nearly everyone follows his orders. I see you've got some skill, talk to the steward later and you might get a new weapon. You'll need to protect everyone tonight. The young and somewhat naive Leon grinned and scratched his head, his gaze frequently drifting to the side of the carriage, where he happened to see Matthew feeding the little one some eggs. His eyes widened in disbelief as he asked, "Oh my God, is the Lord raising a dragon?" Old John lightly smacked him on the head, scolding him for his rashness, and then gave him a sharp look. "The Lord hails from the Set family. You know about the Carl Plains, right? Netheril Empire's granary. The Set family owns nearly a quarter of the land, second only to the Carl family. The current head of the Set family, Count Andre, is the Lord's biological father. Not to mention our Lord is a knowledgeable arcanist who will surely develop our territory and might even build his own mage tower someday. How many people live in Bay Village? What do they usually do for a living?" Leon, fascinated by old John's tales, felt as if the old man had opened up a wider, more exciting world, far beyond the small area around Bay Village that had defined his life until now. Without much caution, Leon began to share details about Bay Village with old John. Captain Sean, standing nearby, twitched his lips, wanting to say something several times, but ultimately chose to remain silent. Finding the scene amusing, Matthew watched old John with great interest. As expected, old John would soon know everything about Leon's family history and then report it all to Steward Ralph. It wasn't long before Matthew, in a calm tone, heard these details from the unperturbed steward. Heh, there's a saying, as long as you're not the protagonist's enemy, you'll generally be fine. Kid, let me give you a lesson. Steward Ralph saw the smile on his lord's face and wisely kept silent, pretending nothing had happened while carefully noting down the information about Leon. Whatever concerns the Lord is the most important thing. Chapter 8, The Scarlet Moon. Chapter 8, The Scarlet Moon. Burp tilde daddy yeah is full. With a soft and affectionate voice in Matthew's mind, the newly awakened and well-fed Yaya nestled back down contentedly. Matthew gently picked her up, clearly feeling that she was much heavier than before, at least 25 pounds now. As for where the 20 pounds of jerky she just ate went, Matthew simply thought, a dragon's appetite is something you should never try to guess. He carefully placed Yaya inside the carriage, protecting her from the soon-to-be shining moonlight. Matthew took the thick cloak handed to him by Steward Ralph, skillfully draped it over himself and looked up at the sky. Beyond the layers of distant clouds, a twisted dark red hue was slowly rising. Remember, never let any part of your body be exposed to the moonlight. Keep your hood and mask on and don't take off your gloves. If you notice any damage to your companion's clothing or armor, immediately wrap them in a cloth sack and tie them up. The person in question must not resist. Rest assured, even if exposed to moonlight, we have holy water and cleansing potions on hand to treat mild aberrations. But everyone must be vigilant. The success rate of cleansing isn't 100%, and it's very expensive. Even if you only bear half the cost, it will still be very painful. If we encounter anyone else, no matter who they are, do not approach them lightly. They may have already undergone an aberration. No contact until they've been inspected. Also, remember that all moving creatures are potentially deadly. Keep your shields ready and stay protected. Only the guards and outpost soldiers are allowed to use weapons to avoid accidental injuries. Steward Ralph's arrangements were meticulous, even earning a nod of approval from Matthew, who quietly took notes. At the same time, Matthew reflected on how, in another world, the moon was praised and longed for by countless poets, yet here it had become a symbol of curse and destruction. Although he didn't know what had happened on the moon, the fact that its light could have such a terrifying effect on the entire material plane was chilling to think about. After donning thick gloves, retying his pant legs, and checking his clothes, Matthew skillfully put on his mask. Through specially crafted light-blocking lenses, Matthew could clearly see his surroundings, comparable to an enhanced version of night vision from another world. Such was the wonder of alchemy and magic. Ralph meticulously checked everyone twice, ensuring there were no oversights, and after exchanging a glance with old John, who was inspecting the horses and vehicles, he raised his voice. Let's move out, head home. An inexplicable power resonated in Ralph's voice, making everyone feel a surge of strength from within, making them feel more energetic and their movements lighter. Level 1 spell, Inspire. Unlike the daytime, the convoy moved silently at night, advancing cautiously on the slightly hardened dirt road. This time, Ralph led the group from the front, vigilantly reminding everyone to watch out for every puddle and mud hole on the road. After all the effort it took to transport these supplies here, losing them tonight would be heart-wrenching. Though he had some experience with night marches, Matthew could distinctly feel that tonight's scarlet moon was completely different. The thin mist and clouds in the sky dispersed. A gigantic blood-red moon hung in the sky. At the center of the moon was a large, dark red spot, resembling a terrifying eye, casting a cold, terrifying gaze that altered anyone it fell upon. Even with foreign objects and masks blocking it, Matthew could still feel a reaction. A deep sense of dread, stemming from the fear ingrained in his very being, reminded Matthew to avoid letting any part of his body touch the moonlight. The entire misty swamp was bathed in a crimson hue. Looking around, the swirling mist resembled a sea of blood, churning with twisted blood waves. Everyone in the convoy breathed heavily, silently keeping their heads down and moving forward. Enemies. Angela looked in the direction of the sound, keenly spotting the enemies and preparing to draw her bow. Matthew raised his hand to stop her, meeting her gaze through her silver mask, and said calmly, "Your strength is important. Conserve your energy and focus on directing the battle. Let them come closer. We'll have to engage them sooner or later, so let's start getting everyone used to fighting." Angela lowered her bow, drew her sword, and loudly called out to the soldiers on the convoy's perimeter. "All teams, be alert. The enemy is approaching. Maintain a tight formation. Combat unit members watch for enemies leaping at you. Keep an eye on both the ground and the sky. 20 warriors, along with a few wandering slaves with profession levels, were divided into 4 groups to protect the convoy from all sides. They vigilantly watched the red mist, occasionally catching glimpses of gray shadows darting around and hearing eerie howls. The sounds were filled with pain and despair, sending shivers down everyone's spines. What was once a silent, misty swamp had turned into a terrifying killing field. Matthew, having witnessed far more horrifying scenes, remained calm, even thinking with interest. This immersive horror scene and sound effects, if recorded, could be used in many horror movies. Whether it was the convoy's large numbers that brought deterrence or the aberrations not fully taking effect yet, the convoy traveled for about half an hour and covered a quarter of the distance before encountering the first substantial attack. The churning blood mist parted as a shadow over a meter tall lunged out, bringing with it a strong stench of blood. It was a blood-soaked black wolf, a common scavenging predator in the misty swamp, with a challenge rating of 2+. Its abdomen and back were covered in wounds, but the wounds were slowly writhing, giving an incredibly disturbing impression. It howled and leaped towards Steward Ralph. A flash of silver light streaked through the air. A sharp rapier pierced through the black wolf's clouded eye socket and exited through the back of its head. The wolf's howl was abruptly cut off. Strangely, even with its brain fatally wounded, the wolf's limbs continued to struggle, clawing deep furrows into the soft mud. Its twisted mouth gnashed fiercely at Ralph. With a swift step forward, Old John swung his long-handled sword, chopping the black wolf's head clean off, finally putting an end to its thrashing. Ralph expertly pried open the wolf's head, his eyes lighting up slightly as he carefully used his rapier to extract a clump of gray-black flesh. Basic flesh essence contaminated. After purification, it can be used to craft magical items and weapons with a market value of 10 gold coins. Familiar information appeared in Matthew's mind, and the detailed data-driven prompts brought him a pleasant surprise. The aberrant black wolf's tenacious vitality had clearly put pressure on the soldiers, which Matthew noticed. Seeing Ralph about to hand him the basic flesh essence, Matthew shook his head and said loudly, "As you can see, while aberrant creatures are dangerous, decapitating them will take them down completely. Additionally, aberrant creatures often have valuable magical materials inside them worth quite a bit. For example, this basic flesh essence is worth 10 gold coins. The distribution will be 30% to those who kill, 25% to those who deal heavy damage, 15% to participants, and the remaining 30% will be split among all combatants. Old John receives 3 gold coins and 75 silver coins, Steward Ralph receives 3 gold coins and 25 silver coins, and the remaining 25 combatants split 1 gold coin and 50 silver coins. This is how the spoils of battle will be distributed going forward. I hope you all fight bravely but also avoid getting hurt." Upon hearing this, Ralph's face grew anxious as he was about to speak up to dismiss what he thought was an absurd idea from Matthew. "All the territory's gains belong to the Lord. Rewarding them with a good meal is enough. Only those who perform exceptionally should receive real rewards. How can we distribute the profits like this?" The other soldiers widened their eyes, their breathing growing heavier, though many still couldn't quite believe it. After all, it's not unheard of for nobles to go back on their word. Please bookmark, follow, and read on. Chapter 9? They might profit, but I never lose. Chapter 9. They might profit, but I never lose. Feeling the intense gazes of the soldiers, Matthew instinctively raised an eyebrow, realizing he might have been too presumptuous. Being a step ahead might earn praise as a genius, but being many steps ahead would only make people think you're crazy. However, Matthew didn't plan on changing this order. He whispered into the anxious ear of Steward Ralph, "When I signed the contract with Yea, I saw some visions. We encountered a deadly threat on the way to the territory." Visions. Deadly threat? Ralph's eyes widened reflexively as he suddenly remembered that the young lord was about to turn 18, the age when talents awaken. The process of signing the contract with the young dragon might have awakened a prophecy talent in him. Just like earlier when the young lord hadn't spoken for days, his first decision avoided the fatal threat of the black dragon. Maybe that was the precursor to his prophetic ability. Or perhaps the young lord's prophetic ability had already awakened long ago, but he kept it hidden in the family to avoid the tragedy from over 10 years ago. If that's the case, then the young lord must have been preparing all these years. Matthew, of course, was unaware of Ralph's extensive mental leaps. To add to his persuasion, he spoke with certainty. "Moreover, I have already mastered advanced alchemy. These materials can be used to produce even more valuable magical equipment in my hands. These items will be the main source of funds for our territory's future development." Upon hearing that Matthew had mastered advanced alchemy, Ralph was better prepared this time. His facial expression remained composed, but his heart was pounding. Looking into Matthew's dark eyes once more, Ralph found himself unable to see through him at all. causing a slight tremor in his heart as he obediently nodded. He turned around, took out 3 gleaming gold coins, and placed them in old John's hand. After a light cough, he spoke loudly to the eagerly watching soldiers. "Did you hear the Lord's orders? This is a rare opportunity, and you'll regret it if you miss out. But remember, don't get injured recklessly, because the cost of treatment will be higher than what you earn, and then your years of service will be extended." Hearing the slightly cheerful tone of the old steward and seeing the gold coins in old John's hand, all the soldiers exchanged excited glances, gripping their weapons tightly and scanning the surrounding mist with eager eyes. Now they no longer feared the possible monsters lurking nearby. Instead, they almost anticipated their arrival. Earlier, everyone was fighting more or less for the Lord. Now they were fighting more for themselves. Seeing the troops' morale greatly boosted, Matthew, the instigator, sighed with relief internally. Directly mastering advanced alchemy was, of course, somewhat unrealistic. In his previous life, he was indeed a demigod-level alchemist and knew many special formulas and techniques. However, much of the alchemy experience and process was assisted by the game system in a simplified manner. In other words, Matthew's theoretical knowledge was strong, but his practical ability needed to be honed step by step. However, he wasn't deceiving the steward. As long as he had the tools and materials, he could quickly improve his alchemy skills. Everything was for the sake of overcoming the immediate crisis. The appearance of the black wolf seemed to have triggered something, as more and more aberrant creatures began charging out of the mist to attack the convoy. This time, 3 mutilated black wolves emerged. Some were missing ears, some lacked tails, and others had lost a leg. Under the blood-red moonlight, their wounds sprouted twisted, blood-red muscle tissue, like little tentacles extending out. This was a sign that the aberration was deepening. This time, Steward Ralph didn't make a move. He quietly stood beside Matthew. After learning about the Lord's abilities, his sole thought was to protect him with all his might. After all, even if the territory development failed, the young lord could still rely on his path as an arcanist. Excited, old John rubbed his hands together, nodded toward Leon, adjusted his stance, and kept his eyes on the lame black wolf as he said, "Just like I said earlier, don't try to kill it in one blow. First, chop off its other front leg, avoid its mouth, and then go for the head." Nervously swallowing, Leon separated from old John, gripping his longsword. As the black wolf leaped at them, old John took a deep breath and with a diagonal sweep of his blade precisely struck the wolf's softer abdomen, slicing open a large gash. A flood of foul-smelling blood splattered on the ground as the black wolf's gaping mouth bit into the dirt. Leon nimbly darted in, slashing at the front limb the wolf was trying to use to get up. Asterisk crunch, asterisk, the black wolf's front leg was severed and its body collapsed back to the ground. Good, old John's eyes lit up, praising Leon's timing and accuracy. He stepped forward and swung his sword, decapitating the wolf in an instant. They quickly dispatched the other 2 black wolves as well. "Raise shields!" Angela's clear command rang out and the frontline soldiers obediently followed, slamming their shields into the 2 charging black wolves. Asterisk bang. Bang! Asterisk, despite being impervious to pain, the wolves still lost the strength contest against the well-trained soldiers and were knocked to the ground. Spear thrusts. Seizing the opportunity, the soldiers jabbed their spears through the gaps in their shields, tearing open the wolves' bellies and pinning them to the ground. Though the black wolves should have been gravely injured, they struggled madly, as if unaffected, even as their wounds were torn wider. However, despite their persistence, they were immobilized and Angela's orders swiftly followed. Shield wielders, encircle them, strangle them, and behead them. The black wolves' howls were quickly silenced by the sound of chopping as the 4 shield-bearing soldiers stepped back and the 4 spear-wielders deftly stabbed their spears into the wolves' heads. Nimble Rogue darted forward, pulling out a slender dagger to examine the corpses before shouting with glee, "Haha, we got lucky." Feeling somewhat bitter, Leon watched as the rogue took 10 gold coins from Steward Ralph's hand, and as the soldiers joyfully split the coins, he felt an immense sense of loss as those precious little gold coins slipped away from him. The other soldiers who hadn't participated in the fight also felt they had missed out on a golden opportunity. They all widened their eyes, staring intently at the surrounding blood mist, now almost eager for battle to arrive. Old John, wiping the blood off his weapon, nudged Leon's foot and grumbled, "What are you looking at? Clean your weapon, check your gear. As long as you stay alive, you'll have gold sooner or later." "I've never even seen a gold coin before," Leon mumbled softly, but he quickly calmed down and obediently followed orders, clearly showing respect for old John's teachings. Sitting in the carriage, Matthew's face was full of amusement beneath his mask as he listened closely to the exchange between Leon and old John, along with the clear and pleasant system prompts. Ding, your subordinate killed an aberrant black wolf, earning 10 experience points. Ding, your subordinate killed an aberrant black wolf, earning 20 experience points. Ding, your subordinate earned 10 experience points. Wait, why only 3 prompts? Ralph's kill of the aberrant black wolf didn't count. Raising an eyebrow instinctively, Matthew immediately began analyzing the difference. Logically, Steward Ralph is closer to me, so he should count as my official subordinate. I get it, the key is money. Perhaps in the system's judgment, I hired these subordinates with money, creating a relationship similar to that between NPCs and players in quests, hence I can earn experience points. If that's the case, does that mean I'll also earn experience if I take action myself? Chapter 10, The Aberrant Beast Horde. Chapter 10. The aberrant beast horde under the blood moon, the terrifying moonlight grew increasingly bright. Matthew could clearly feel the corrupting and distorting power becoming stronger. Correspondingly, the frequency and number of aberrant creatures appearing were increasing. It wasn't just aberrant black wolves attacking the convoy. Soon, the infamous swamp murlocs of the Misty Swamp began to emerge. Swamp murlocs, along with similarly diminutive goblins and kobolds, were often called the cockroach species of the material plane. Individually, they weren't strong. Even an ordinary adult woman could easily bully them. Many children who underwent training had their first real combat missions against murlocs, goblins, and kobolds. However, despite being weak individually, these three species consistently ranked among the top 3 in the yearly rankings of creatures that killed the most humans and adventurers in the wild. The main reason for this was their large numbers and extremely high reproductive rates. If not regularly culled, within 3 years they could infest swampy areas and rivers like the Misty Swamp. Murlocs too could be corrupted by the crimson moon and undergo terrifying mutations. Their 1-meter tall bodies would swell to nearly 2 meters, and their short limbs would elongate, becoming muscular and bone-spiked claws. */ A sharp sword cleaved through the gaping maw of a murloc, and its blood-streaked body wobbled before collapsing. Angela didn't pause to collect loot but quickly retreated to the front of the carriage, warily eyeing the aberrant murlocs on either side of the convoy while skillfully directing. Murloc heads are fragile. Aim for a killing blow when you get the chance. They may be small and agile, but they lack jumping ability. Use shields in tandem for defense and pair up spearmen to take them down. Despite her limited combat experience, Angela's extensive formal military training made her well-suited to command, particularly against such straightforward enemies as aberrant murlocs. Although the Cyril family soldiers might not be the most outstanding individually, their obedience and coordination were exceptional. 7 or 8 aberrant murlocs lunged at 6 shield-bearers, mindlessly flailing their claws against the shields, leaving bloody marks before being skewered by spears thrust from behind the shields. The guttural growls of the murlocs soon fell silent. From the initial excitement to the quiet cleanup, the soldiers who participated in the battle were becoming increasingly seasoned. Any stray aberrant creatures were swiftly dispatched by the now battle-hardened soldiers. If too many aberrant creatures appeared, Angela and Steward Ralph would step in to quickly eliminate a few before returning to their positions. Earned 30 experience points. Earned 20 experience points. Listening to the series of notifications, Matthew took the opportunity to analyze the differences behind each experience point gain. The size doesn't seem to differ much. The level of aberration is similar. The identity doesn't matter much either. The most likely explanation is the difference in class levels. How interesting, are there really that many murlocs with class levels in the Misty Swamp? If a murloc can become a class-level aberrant creature, it means their original numbers were at least in the hundreds. So, these few murloc class-level aberrant creatures might be the last essence of 1,000 murlocs. Even in such circumstances, the number of murlocs continues to grow. Matthew had a hunch that in this real world, even the creatures he used to dismiss and ignore might bring unexpected trouble. While the soldiers were getting increasingly excited, the nervous cart drivers were also beginning to relax. They occasionally glanced enviously at the soldiers sharing gold coins, their minds full of thoughts as they quietly conversed with one another. Another piece of magical material, that's the 5th one, right? No, it's the 6th already. All 4 squads have shared some gold, but not everyone got gold coins. Even so, the shield bearers have each earned over 90 silver coins. 90 silver coins. It used to take us 4 months to earn that much. That depends on the harvest. Do you think we should? Forget it. Those class-level fighters don't end well. Better to live a quiet life farming. That's just talk. If you really wanted a quiet life, you wouldn't have come here with us, would you? Well, it must be said that while the cart drivers might have limited vision, they didn't lack courage or the desire for a better life. This was, in fact, one of Matthew's goals: to ignite the desire for change in more people, to provide them with some assistance to disrupt the old order, and to naturally support this transformation. thus driving the entire territory forward. This was Matthew's true intention. Simply farming wouldn't change the world. The end result would be to die quietly, without a sound, because the earth-shattering change was coming. After traveling for another half hour, the convoy showed little fatigue. Adequate food supplies, the relatively relaxed atmosphere, and occasional exciting rewards kept everyone in good spirits. Asterisk roar, asterisk asterisk croak, croak asterisk asterisk hiss, hiss asterisk the sound of roars echoed all around, drawing closer. The convoy was moving further away from the misty swamp, allowing them to see the approaching aberrant creatures from a greater distance. This time, the number of aberrant creatures was overwhelming. Matthew quickly counted, estimating there were at least 30 or 40. This was an alarming number. It wasn't just more black wolves and murlocs, there was also a terrifying new creature. Swamp crocodiles. Ordinary swamp crocodiles already had a challenge rating of 5. In swampy terrain, even mid-level class fighters would hesitate to challenge them. After the aberration, while they no longer relied on ambushes, they became even more dangerous. These creatures were 7 meters long, with toothy maws that made up a third of their body length. Their gray-black scales gleamed eerily, and occasionally split open to reveal thin, twisted tendrils of flesh. Their limbs had grown stronger and longer, allowing them to crawl rapidly forward. The sound of them slapping through the mud was terrifying. Their challenge rating had now reached 7+, and there were 2 of them. The other aberrant creatures weren't easy to deal with either. Any aberrant creature that survived the initial chaos meant it possessed the combat power of a class fighter. Over time, as they devoured more flesh and their infection deepened, their mutated limbs became more terrifying and their strength increased. Handling 7 or 8 at a time was already the convoy's limit. Now, with 3 or 4 dozen appearing at once, the situation could easily lead to significant casualties or even break up the convoy entirely. The soldiers, now battle-hardened, were well aware of this, and their faces turned pale. The cart drivers were also panicking as the howls grew closer. Seeing morale plummet, Steward Ralph stood tall, ready to give an inspiring speech, unwilling to let things spiral out of control. But Matthew was faster. He stood up, looking at the 10+ black wolves charging from behind, and raised his staff. Drawing on his mental strength, mana gathered within him, flowing through the spell model, conducted through the staff's structure, transforming into a bright red fireball that flew toward the distant enemies with a roar. Fireball, Chapter 11, The Powerful Arcanist. Chapter 11, The Powerful Arcanist. A fireball the size of a basin whooshed as it flew out. It gradually expanded in the air, guided by mental power, and precisely landed in the center of the mutated black wolves. With a loud boom, the fireball instantly exploded, scorching tongues of flame engulfing several mutated black wolves. The terrifying impact force tore the surrounding mutated black wolves apart. When the dust settled of the more than 10 mutated black wolves, only 4 or 5 struggled to get back up. One spell instantly took out nearly 10 mutated creatures. All the soldiers who witnessed this were stunned and immediately reinvigorated. The rear warriors swiftly stepped forward and easily slaughtered the few mutated black wolves that could barely move. The scavengers cleaning the battlefield came back with 3 pieces of basic flesh essence, proudly shouting to everyone, "Keep it up, guys!" The other squads of warriors naturally wouldn't be outdone, bursting with far more enthusiasm than usual, and under the command of the knight Angela, began fighting the charging mutated creatures. The mutated murlocs were the first to be cleared out. Their bodies were small, their heads fragile, their attack power weak, and their agility low. A shield blocked them, a spear or blade fell, and they were basically done for. However, they had a decent drop rate for materials, with one dropping about every 5 kills. With the threats on both sides eliminated, the freed-up soldiers quickly supported their other comrades. A massive mutated bull, panting heavily, charged forward. It was nearly 2 meters tall, weighing over 1,000 kilograms, with 2 sharp horns on its head, a truly intimidating giant. But the soft, muddy swamp submerged its front hooves, making it difficult to move. Angela, ever sharp in battle, organized the soldiers to trap it in the mud pit. Before it could climb onto the road, 4 or 5 spears were brutally thrust forward. The stinking blood dyed the entire mud pit red. The mutated bull howled non-stop, its body sinking deeper and deeper, until Angela arrived and beheaded it with a single strike. The mutated bull, with its tenacious vitality, held on until the end, but the other mutated creatures had long been dealt with. Ding, you have killed a mutated black wolf, gaining 20 experience points. Ding, you have killed a mutated black wolf, gaining 30 experience points and 1 skill point. Ding, you have killed a mutated black wolf, gaining 20 experience points. Ding, you have killed 1 skill point. The nearly identical kill notifications echoed in his ears, and Matthew quickly noticed the differences. As expected, when you take action yourself, you can earn extra skill points, which seems equivalent to increasing skill proficiency. Looking at it this way, each method has its own advantages. It seems I will need to be more generous in the future. 2 massive mutated crocodiles showed up late after all the other mutated creatures were dead. Matthew calculated the speed of the mutated crocodiles and found it to be roughly the same as an adult walking quickly. If the convoy abandoned all the supplies, they could probably outpace their pursuit. As for the supplies, the mutated creatures wouldn't be interested in them, so they could come back and retrieve them the next morning after the night passed. This plan seemed highly feasible, but Matthew just quietly sat on the wagon, silently staring at the -3 in his luck attribute. Matthew vaguely remembered the final days of his previous life as a player. In months of consecutive battles, both his army and the kingdom faced nothing but misfortune. If it wasn't a natural disaster, it was the revival of evil gods, as if all the bad luck in the world had gathered at once. Gradually, Matthew realized that someone was sabotaging things behind the scenes. In the face of all the bad luck, Matthew did everything he could to deal with it, even though things kept getting worse. Until the critical moment of the final battle when the fatal weapons all collectively failed. Knowing that there was no hope left, Matthew unhesitatingly sacrificed himself, transforming into the strongest weapon, and heroically took down Death Yeager and the great evil god Lotthander. Little did he know, beside them, the goddess of luck Tymora, who was about to teleport away, was also played by Luck. The teleportation failed, and she didn't even manage to put up a decent resistance or struggle, being taken down alongside Matthew. Reflecting on it now, Matthew immediately speculated that the ability Choice of Fate likely came from the goddess of luck, Tymora. Those who recklessly toy with luck and misfortune will eventually be played by fate. If Matthew kept running, he might escape for a while, but he certainly wouldn't escape forever. Give it your all, never miss a single opportunity, and fate will shatter. Matthew stood up, watching the mutated crocodiles approaching, silently calculating the distance. When the one on the right came within 50 meters, he decisively flung another fireball. Boom! The glowing fireball accurately struck the mutated crocodile's head, and the expanding flames enveloped its upper body. The violent shockwave blasted away countless mud and dirty water. The fierce tremors made every warrior gulp, witnessing the devastating power of the fireball. When the thick smoke slowly dissipated, the once smooth muddy ground now had a semicircular crater 4 to 5 meters in diameter. The power of the fireball spell, to such an extent, everyone only felt their scalps tingle, and they began to revere the power of their lord Matthew. Even the old butler Nalf, standing beside Matthew, hadn't expected the power of Matthew's fireball spell to be this strong, far exceeding the fireballs released by ordinary mages or arcanists. Could it be that the lord has been researching how to enhance the fireball spell all this time? Or perhaps the lord's natural talent is just that strong, but it has simply gone unnoticed until now. Looking at it this way, the Lord's decision to sign with the young dragon was truly wise. With his accumulated potential, the Arcanist's level will quickly rise and maybe... Roar! The mutated crocodile's smoking head poked out from the semicircular mud pit. 1/3 of its mouth had been blown apart, revealing a bloody gash inside, with even small flames crackling as they burned. The mutated crocodile, seemingly without any sense of pain, shook its head, flinging away chunks of blood and flesh. Before it could completely climb out, another speeding fireball smashed into its head. The expanding flames, with their terrifying destructive power, completely shredded its head. The massive headless body writhed madly twice before finally plopping into the soft mud pit. Ding! You used an overtier spell fireball, consuming 60 additional 50% consumption mana points. Ding! Your fireball spell dealt 16 points of final damage, 100% critical boost to the mutated crocodile. The mutated crocodile has died. Ding! You killed a mutated crocodile, gaining 70 experience points and 1 skill point. Having used up 180 mana points in one go, Matthew let out a soft sigh and calmly sat down. He set down the staff that had expended its fireball uses and turned to Angela, who was in the center of the group, saying, "Its vitality is quite strong, about 1.5 times that of the mutated bull, but its movement speed is slow, its reaction time slow, and it's dull when faced with attacks. Now is the perfect opportunity for training. Everyone work together to deal with it, and then we'll continue on our way." Hearing Matthew's confident voice, the soldiers snapped out of their shock. They once again truly felt the power and terror of the Arcanist, and they became even more excited. Having such a lord is undoubtedly a blessing. Matthew, with only 70 mana points remaining after using up most of it, certainly wouldn't tell everyone that he was almost out of resources. He simply smiled as he enjoyed everyone's awestruck gazes. Chapter 12, I will make a move. Chapter 12, I will make a move. After obtaining the basic information on the mutated crocodile, Angela immediately changed weapons and tools. Open cart number 9, each of the scavengers gets a short bow. Your next task is to do everything you can to shoot out its 2 eyes. Old John. Grab the oil canisters and find an opportunity to throw them, aiming for its head if possible. Everyone else avoid its front. Its turning ability is weak, so be sure to dodge its attacks. Absolutely don't stand behind it. The tail's attacks are just as deadly. After assigning tasks, Angela picked up a metal longbow, skillfully nocked an arrow aimed at the charging mutated crocodile, ignoring the corpses of its companions, adjusted her breathing slightly, and released the arrow. With a sharp whoosh, the speeding arrow struck the mutated crocodile's head precisely, sending a splash of blood into the air. The mutated crocodile, hit by the arrow, roared angrily, shook its head as if nothing had happened, and continued charging. However, its blood-colored vertical pupils seemed to have locked onto Angela. Mutated creatures are fearless, but they can instinctively identify who poses the greatest threat. Gently patting her warhorse, Angela took the initiative to ride forward, simultaneously nocking another arrow, demonstrating her exquisite riding and archery skills. The second arrow also struck the mutated crocodile's head precisely. The mutated crocodile was fully enraged by Angela and roared as it chased after her, drawn away from the convoy. The scavengers took the opportunity to nock arrows, but their archery was nowhere near as accurate as Angela's. Most of the arrows struck the thick, hard hide of the mutated crocodile, barely piercing it, with a few even bouncing off. Old John seized the moment, leading Leon forward, carrying 2 black ceramic jars as they moved toward the mutated crocodile. Angela, atop her horse, looked at the approaching mutated crocodile, her emerald green eyes showing a hint of seriousness. She adjusted her breathing, aiming again before shooting. Thwack! Blood and muddy fluid sprayed out from the mutated crocodile's exploded eye socket. It let out a shrill howl as one of its eyes was suddenly blinded, causing its massive body to momentarily freeze in place before recovering after several breaths. The mutated crocodile was far more deeply infected than the other mutated creatures. Angela, with her keen eyesight, clearly saw tiny flesh tendrils rapidly growing and spreading from the mutated crocodile's blinded eye, seemingly repairing or deeply contaminating it. Old John, seizing the opportunity, adjusted his steps, and as the mutated crocodile prepared to move again, he nodded toward Leon. "Throw it and run, be sure not to get any on yourself. Aim for the head if possible, but if you can't, hit the limbs." Leon, feeling a bit anxious, gulped and quickly nodded. The massive mutated crocodile, with a nearly half-meter thick body, charged at Angela. The half-elf knight was well prepared, controlling her beloved warhorse to swerve to the right and gallop away. She didn't put too much distance between herself and the crocodile, preventing it from changing targets or direction. The sudden turn caused the mutated creature to fling half its body into the mud. Its 2 front claws gripped the ground tightly, while its hind legs kicked forcefully into the muddy swamp. Several black ceramic jars flew through the air. They shattered on the mutated crocodile's back, coating it with thick, dark alchemical oil. With a hint of regret in her eyes, Angela turned, nocked an arrow, and fired. A streak of fiery light shot out from the oil-soaked arrowhead, precisely hitting the mutated crocodile's back. Fierce flames erupted with crackling sounds. The deep roar mixed with the crackling of the flames, becoming particularly chaotic. The mutated crocodile thrashed wildly like a burning torch, rolling and struggling to shake off the engulfing flames. This special alchemical oil was specifically prepared by Butler Ralph to deal with the swamp crocodiles. Its adhesive properties were incredibly strong, continuing to burn even in water, capable of burning through the swamp crocodile's skin and scorching their bones. However, what could kill an ordinary swamp crocodile couldn't kill a mutated one. The mutated crocodile's vitality was astonishingly strong. Even while burning in flames, it tenaciously continued its pursuit of Angela. 4 or 5 scavengers kept shooting arrows, but their accuracy was so poor that it felt like nothing more than a scratch in Matthew's eyes. The mutated crocodile appeared heavily wounded, but under Matthew's gaze, its health bar still showed 10 points, and it was still regenerating. Although the regeneration rate wasn't high, this terrifying vitality reminded Matthew of high-tier mutated creatures from the past. The mutated crocodile displayed incredible endurance, and Angela, with her superb riding skills, had been entangled with it for several minutes. However, the muddy terrain was treacherous, and her horse couldn't perform at full speed, allowing the mutated crocodile to close in. The scavengers' attacks and harassment didn't have much effect. Old John launched 2 strong attacks, barely avoiding being swatted by the crocodile's swinging tail. Leon made 2 sudden strikes but failed to cause any real trouble for the mutated crocodile, as even the bleeding wounds sprouted clusters of disgusting tentacles. Butler Ralph noticed Angela was about to fall into danger and instinctively furrowed his brow. The noise behind her was growing louder, and Angela knew the battle plan had failed. The mutated creature's incredible vitality and defense exceeded her expectations, and the other's attacks couldn't relieve the pressure she was under. Once her horse became exhausted, she would inevitably have to engage the mutated crocodile in close combat. "I can't wait any longer." Just as Angela prepared to grit her teeth and fight head-on, out of the corner of her eye, she saw that the lord who had been seated on the wagon had risen to his feet once more. He raised his red staff and, as the mutated crocodile charged toward her, began chanting in a low voice, "Magic missile." A brilliant blue light gathered at the tip of the staff. The magic missile, trailing flames, shot toward the mutated crocodile. With incredible penetration, they blasted through the gray-black scales, tearing open a massive gash. 1, 2, 3. The burning head of the mutated crocodile was torn into several pieces. Its massive body, as if it had lost control, suddenly collapsed into the soft mud. Its wild charging stance came to an abrupt halt. Old John, who had been chasing after it, gasped in shock, inhaling the thick, bloody stench in the air. He looked at the lord, who had nonchalantly sat back down, with a gaze full of reverence. The lord had effortlessly killed 2 such terrifying mutated creatures, as if it were as simple as breathing. This filled him with deep respect and gave him some new ideas. Perhaps the lord's territory would be a safer place to live. Leon stared blankly at the approaching mutated crocodile, sensing the terrifying destructive power and vitality within its massive body. Is this the power of an arcanist? Such power! Matthew's casual defeat of the mutated crocodile ignited cheers of joy from the soldiers, who looked at him with respect, many shouting in victory. This is the power of an arcanist. Chapter 13? The Arrival of Misfortune. Chapter 13. The arrival of misfortune. The reason the Netheril Empire was able to grow and expand despite being squeezed between barbarians and orcs was due to its strong development and cultivation of arcane masters. Of course, what brought them success with arcane masters also became their downfall. When an empire's armed forces begin to take extreme measures, significant hidden dangers and flaws inevitably arise. Suppressing his excitement, Steward Ralph raised his voice and shouted, "You should be grateful to have the Lord here. These aberrant creatures are nothing more than lambs to the slaughter. But at the same time, don't let your guard down. Don't rely on the Lord to handle everything. You must play your part, earn your rewards, and prove your worth." Angela, who had just returned with a large piece of flesh essence, bit her lip and lowered her head slightly. Beneath her silver mask, there was a trace of unease on her face. However, Matthew gently patted her shoulder and said softly, with a warm tone of reassurance, "Don't worry. With me as your support, you can freely display your talents." The young knight had never experienced such treatment before, and she was filled with a sudden surge of loyalty and determination. She nodded solemnly, saluted, and began commanding the soldiers to clean up the battlefield and prepare to continue their journey as quickly as possible. Glancing at his empty mana reserves, Matthew reminisced about the real-time feedback he received from killing the aberrant crocodile. Looking at the 800 experience points and 4 skill points he'd accumulated, he couldn't help but smile to himself. Indeed, recruiting a bunch of henchmen is absolutely necessary. Stepping in at crucial moments not only establishes authority but also allows me to rightfully claim the kills. After dealing with that large wave of aberrant creatures, their numbers once again dwindled. The soldiers were able to relax a little. Angela had the soldiers rotate and rest. She also made sure that those who hadn't yet fought worked together to kill some aberrant creatures, building up their battle experience and honing their skills. Angela did this to prevent any mishaps later, in case inexperienced soldiers faltered or panicked in a crisis. Our veteran soldiers made by training rookies into them. Matthew, however, saw things more clearly. Originally, out of the 20 soldiers, only half were warrior-class fighters, with only Old John and Captain Sean reaching level 3. After several hours of fighting, 4 more soldiers had stepped onto the warrior's path, becoming level 1 professionals. The other soldiers had also improved their skills to varying degrees. Matthew was most impressed by Leon's rapid progress. In just over an hour, Leon had learned basic blade techniques LV1 from Old John and had made significant progress in White Wolf swordsmanship, approaching LV2. His extraordinary rate of growth left Matthew astonished. As expected in times of chaos, the chances of heroes emerging increased dramatically. Is this because the old order has been broken, giving more people opportunities? Or is the world itself sensing the impending danger, struggling to resist and adapt? Without intervening further, Matthew was happy to quietly enjoy the rewards of everyone else's battles. 30 experience points weren't much, but 10 wasn't too little either. Unknowingly, Matthew's accumulated experience was approaching 900. At that moment, Ralph glanced at the enchanted chest full of flesh essence, did some quick calculations, and nervously whispered in Matthew's ear. Of the 3,000 gold coins provided by the family, 500 were spent on various supplies. Of the remaining 500, we've already handed out 230 gold coins. The smile beneath Matthew's mask froze instantly, and he felt a strange sense of déjà vu, like his first time playing a game. As expected, no matter the world, money is something you can never have enough of. However, even though spending was fast, it hadn't been without gains. The soldiers were now highly motivated and more or less won over by Matthew. Judging by the reverent glances they occasionally shot his way, they were clearly within his control. Matthew found the cost quite reasonable, spending a few hundred gold coins to establish the image of a powerful, reliable, and fair lord. A very worthwhile investment. Of course, Steward Ralph would need to be reassured as well. His combat ability might not be the strongest, but his management skills were outstanding, making him someone Matthew could confidently rely on. Matthew said gently, "It's all right. Keep spending without worry. If we run out of gold coins, we can barter for better quality weapons. Once we return to the territory, I will immediately process these flesh essences into life potions and enchanted weapons. As long as we can find buyers, we should be able to exchange them for a significant amount of gold and resources. Based on the materials we've collected so far, earning 1,000 gold coins is entirely possible, with at least triple the profit." Relieved once again, Ralph nodded in agreement, continuing to distribute gold to the soldiers, keeping track of their merits and maintaining morale. In his heart, Ralph couldn't help but reflect on Matthew's astonishing spellcasting abilities. Thinking of Matthew's decisive actions today, Ralph realized that his lord likely had cards up his sleeve that even he didn't know about. This only made Ralph more reassured. In the sky, the blood-red moon had turned completely crimson, leaving no trace of white. Under the eerie red light, the entire world appeared distorted and terrifying. The convoy had covered about 2/3 of the journey and was nearing the edge of the misty swamp. A dense, chaotic noise gradually began to rise from afar. At first, it was just some faint, crackling sounds which everyone thought were the calls of insects or birds, or perhaps the howls of aberrant creatures. But soon, when a horde of dark figures began to swarm forward, old John, who was scouting ahead, shouted sharply, "Enemy horde up ahead!" Leon, seeing the approaching blood-red figures, felt a wave of anxiety. His breathing became heavier beneath his mask. Old John patted him on the shoulder, speaking in a calm, steady voice, "Don't panic. Stay calm and you'll deal with the danger and kill the enemy. The more reckless you are, the greater the chance of death." Forcing himself to calm down, Leon breathed steadily, focusing intently on the incoming enemies, grateful for old John's guidance. "Stop the advance!" Angela took out a monocular and peered through the fading mist to see hundreds of aberrant murlocs. Her face changed, but then she remembered Matthew's reassurance and quickly suppressed her emotions, calmly issuing orders. "Pull all the wagons together, forming a ring with the rears facing out, leaving the draft horses inside. Each group of 3 soldiers retrieve long wooden shields from cart 7 and set them up to block gaps. Trained militiamen step forward. Get spears from cart 10 and assist the shield bearers in sealing off any openings. John and Sean, you'll each lead the first and second rows of spearmen. Make sure they know their positions and teach them how to strike effectively. Archers, step up. Climb onto the wagons and shoot down at the larger aberrant murlocs from above. Remember, aim carefully before shooting. Target their heads to be effective, otherwise you're just wasting energy and arrows. Cart drivers from cart 9. Take out the oil jars and distribute them evenly around the perimeter. More shields, quickly dig a trench around the convoy, then use the shields to block it. Anyone else? Grab a spear and be ready to stab at any aberrant murlocs trying to squeeze through gaps under the wagons. Angela's commands came faster and faster, with Ralph stepping in to help with the organization. Matthew silently rubbed his nose, watching the swarm of aberrant murlocs approaching, feeling a strange mix of apprehension and relief. "I knew misfortune wouldn't be dispelled so easily. If we hadn't killed those 2 aberrant crocodiles earlier and had abandoned all the supplies to flee, we'd probably be caught between the aberrant murlocs and the aberrant crocodiles by now. Indeed, the more you try to avoid danger, the greater it becomes, until there's nowhere left to run, nowhere to hide." Glancing at his attribute panel, Matthew stood up amidst the soldiers' watchful eyes, calmly gripping his staff and looking into the distance. His tranquil demeanor captivated the soldiers. "Don't mind me, I can only offer this much support for now." Chapter 14 Formation. Chapter 14 Formation. The cacophony of shrieks and howls didn't seem very intimidating at first, but when that sound came from hundreds of twisted, terrifying aberrant murlocs, it was an entirely different situation. Matthew wasn't too concerned about the busy soldiers. He watched the swarm of aberrant murlocs approach with a sense of disbelief. This isn't right. Aberrant creatures rarely gather in such large numbers. Once they can't get enough blood, they usually turn on each other in vicious fights. It's part of their inevitable path toward deeper corruption. But now this isn't the case at all. Could something have happened with the Crimson Moon? Or perhaps there's a higher level aberrant entity among these murlocs. Whatever the reason, it wasn't good news for Matthew and the convoy. Matthew found some solace in Ralph's commendable professionalism. Even though Ralph hadn't anticipated an attack and encirclement by aberrant creatures under the influence of the Crimson Moon, he had prepared the convoy with a variety of weapons and supplies for different enemies they might encounter. Each soldier was equipped with a sturdy ironwood shield. When they set them firmly into the ground, the small, weak aberrant murlocs could barely budge them. Over 100 spears had been distributed, bolstering the courage of the convoy's cart drivers enough to prevent panic or collapse. Meanwhile, Ralph pulled out 2 glowing red scrolls from his space pouch and solemnly handed them to Matthew. Fireball Scrolls X2. These were originally intended for the trolls lurking in the dark forests around Bay Village. Each scroll had cost 200 gold coins as part of the supply purchase. Casting Fireball through his staff would still drain Matthew's mana, but compared to the backlash from overcasting, the 50% mana consumption was manageable. Spell Scrolls, however, were different. They required only a small amount of mana to fully release a spell, and the power of the spell was fixed, depending on the skill of the scroll's creator. In simpler terms, spell scrolls were like one-time use items, an otherworldly version of a rocket launcher. With these 2 scrolls, Matthew had secured another layer of combat strength. But this time, Matthew didn't immediately use them against the charging aberrant murlocs. Instead, he let them draw closer. He could see the crimson eyes of the aberrant murlocs, their distorted, multiple arms, the red tendrils emerging from their wounds, their nearly vanished scales, and their bestial crawling posture. There was no doubt these aberrant murlocs were heavily corrupted, to the point they no longer even resembled murlocs. They howled as they crossed the muddy pools, surging like a bloody tide, driven by a thirst for blood. Leon, behind his shield, was nervous, but old John guided him. Don't push the shield outward. Tilt it and brace it inward, letting the impact transfer through the support pole to the ground. There's nothing to fear from these aberrant murlocs. They have weak attacks, lack strength, and are slow. If they pile up, they're just delivering loot to us. Old John didn't lower his voice, speaking not just to Leon but also to the other anxious soldiers nearby. Captain Sean, who had extensive combat experience, glanced back at their lord standing tall and quickly added, "That's right. We've always cut down these murlocs easily. 10 of us can take out 100 of them without breaking a sweat. Plus, killing them usually yields nothing. At best, we'd extract a murloc heart and sell it for 5 silver coins. Now, though, they're worth a fortune." The nervous soldiers, interrupted by these 2 veterans, thought for a moment and realized they were right. They began to chuckle. Leon, now calmer, quickly recognized the captain's purpose and deliberately asked, "With so many murlocs, how many gold coins do you think we can earn?" Ralph, who had been waiting for the right moment, laughed heartily, pulling out a full money pouch from his coat and grabbing a handful of glittering gold coins. He shouted generously, "There's plenty of gold to go around. It just depends on your luck. I'm hoping for at least 30 pieces of material. And yes, any cart drivers who join the fight will share the rewards too." Wow, 30 pieces? That should be over 100 gold coins, right? You idiot, it's 300 gold coins. What? 300 gold coins? I barely make 3 a year. How much can we get from this? Didn't you hear the steward? Anyone who fights gets a share. If you don't do much, you'll get maybe 30 silver. But if you work hard, you'll easily make at least 1 gold coin. 1 gold coin? At this, not just the soldiers but also the cart drivers who had been eyeing the loot enviously felt their morale soar. Watching Ralph turn this deadly battle into a bounty hunt, Matthew couldn't shake a strange feeling of déjà vu. Wait a minute, isn't that exactly what I did earlier? Ralph's just mimicking me. As Matthew pondered this, the aberrant murlocs crashed into their defensive line. Thud, crack. The sound of screeching and snapping bones filled the air as the prepared formation withstood the first wave of the murlocs' assault. Matthew watched as the aberrant murlocs swarmed like a tide of insects, encircling the convoy, and calmly waited for the right moment to unleash the scrolls. Blood-stained claws beat relentlessly against the shields, leaving bloody marks. Yet the impact was far less than the soldiers had expected. allowing them to exhale in relief. "Hold the line." Angela, with a composed expression, suppressed the soldier's urge to attack, waiting until every soldier had engaged with the murlocs before shouting with satisfaction, "First row, thrust!" Having held back for so long, the soldiers thrust their spears and pikes forward at the order. From the middle of the shields, sharp metal tips thrust out in unison, piercing through the twisted heads of the aberrant murlocs, accompanied by a gush of blood before being swiftly withdrawn. Retreat! Each spear was manned by 2 strong cart drivers behind it. Having undergone militia training, they ignored the gruesome sight ahead of the shields and worked together to pull the spears back. The dark red blood coated the spear tips, dripping slowly to the ground and seeping into the muddy earth. "Second row, advance, thrust!" Under the leadership of Old John and Captain Sean, the second row of spearmen pushed forward fiercely. Angled from the upper edges of the shields, their spears stabbed downward, impaling the aberrant murlocs that clawed at the shields. "Retreat!" With the crisp command, the dying aberrant murlocs slumped lifelessly to the ground. The relentless murlocs stepped over the corpses of their fallen, pressing the attack with no hesitation. Within a few breaths, the gaps left by the dead were filled once more by these terrifying creatures. "First row, advance, thrust!" The blood-soaked spear tips continued to dart out from behind the shields in a repeating cycle, efficiently reaping the lives of the aberrant murlocs. After several rounds, the murlocs lay dead in droves. However, the repeated exertion took its toll on the cart drivers, who were now visibly tiring. Unlike the trained soldiers, the untrained cart drivers didn't know how to conserve their energy in such intense combat. This is the difference between amateurs and professionals. Chapter 15, Deadly Attack. Chapter 15, Deadly Attack. Once they could no longer maintain their strength to quickly clear the approaching aberrant murlocs, the creatures would begin to trample over their fallen comrades, climbing over the shields and breaking through the defense line. Ralph the steward keenly noticed this and took a deep breath before shouting, "Good job, everyone, keep holding on. We just found at least 3 pieces of material. Everyone will get 10 silver coins each, so keep pushing." Ralph's voice carried a strange power, inspiring the soldiers who heard him, and they felt new strength surge within them. The exhausted cart drivers also felt their energy return. The rangers on the rooftops, armed with bows, focused their arrows on the larger, more dangerous aberrant murlocs. These more powerful murlocs, pressed in by their comrades, could barely move, and they were quickly picked off by the concentrated volleys of arrows. Under the influence of multiple factors, the battle line gradually stabilized. In just a few short minutes, over 400 aberrant murlocs had lost nearly a third of their number in clashes with the shield wall. Blood soaked the mud, seeping through the defensive lines of shields and carts, and from above, it looked like a red tide slowly engulfing the convoy. Angela, commanding the battle, kept a wary eye on the ever-growing pile of corpses. Soon the bodies would form a slope. Once the murlocs could climb over the pile, they would bypass the shields and directly attack the soldiers holding them. "Don't hesitate!" The familiar voice of her lord suddenly reached her ears, and Angela turned to see Matthew nodding at her. Beneath his silver-white metal mask, a bright smile played across Matthew's lips. "Frontline retreat. Throw the oil casks." Crackling sounds followed as the flammable oil spilled across the bloody ground. The red aberrant murlocs, crawling and pushing through the mud, were quickly soaked in the blackened oil. The soldiers, following the Lord's orders, cleared the murlocs in front of them with their spears and quickly pulled back, shields in hand. Simultaneously, several flaming arrows fell onto the oil-soaked ground. Whoosh! Flames burst forth, immediately engulfing the murlocs in front of them. A towering wall of fire rose up in the marshland. Though the murlocs felt no pain, their survival instincts kicked in as they frantically tried to escape the flames, spreading the burning oil and fire even further, consuming nearly all the murlocs in front of them. They didn't make it far. Their small, thin bodies were soon devoured by the inferno, burning to ash in the intense heat. As the soldiers retreated under Angela's command, they quickly inspected their gear for damage and formed a new defensive line. Through his green-tinted goggles, Matthew watched the flames reflect off the crimson mist, feeling the heat even through his mask. With that one move, over 80 murlocs had been burned to death, but there were still around 200 aberrant murlocs remaining. The situation, which should have been easing, caused Matthew to frown as the real-time status displayed a sudden, eerie change in the remaining murlocs. Deep corruption, berserk aberrant state, challenge rating 2+. Right arrow 3+? Their bodies became more twisted and their once bloated fish-like forms began to thin out, with their limbs growing long and bony, sprouting sharp spikes. With the collective rise in their challenge ratings, Matthew sensed something dire. What's happening? Is this some temporary state or the result of being provoked by the deaths of their comrades? No, even 20 years later I never saw anything like this. At that moment, an overwhelming pressure suddenly surged from the sky. Matthew looked up, feeling an indescribable sense of danger flooding his mind. All he could see was the eternally looming blood moon. The terrifying pressure passed in an instant, as if it had never been there. Ding, willpower check initiated. Willpower check passed. The clear, flashing notification, along with the now alerted Yaya, confirmed to Matthew that something critical had just happened. The regular soldiers remained oblivious, but the aberrant creatures had undergone a noticeable change. It must be something with the Crimson Moon, something crucial. Perhaps this change is why the Crimson Moon's influence began to decline over the next 20 years, which means that after tonight the dangers brought by the Crimson Moon will gradually diminish for quite some time. But that doesn't help us right now. Matthew's gaze remained on the now more powerful aberrant murlocs. Their strength increased as if they had consumed some strange mutation elixir. He felt a headache coming on. Crunchy. Grag. The aberrant murlocs slammed into the wooden shields, their impacts growing stronger and stronger. Although they hadn't yet breached the defenses, the pressure on the soldiers was mounting. As the snarling faces of the aberrant creatures and their deafening roars grew closer, some of the soldiers began to falter. Especially as the wooden shields started to splinter under the murlocs' claws, forcing Old John and Captain Sean to quickly step in, dispatching the murlocs trying to slip through the gaps. They had to call in reserve spearmen to hold these weak points. But soon, even the rear of the carts, which were slightly less durable than the shields, began to be torn apart by the murlocs. Despite the seemingly small increase in their challenge rating, the murlocs' destructive power had escalated dramatically. Their mutated claws, now bristling with bone spikes, could cause significant damage to the wooden shields, and with sustained attacks, the shields were at risk of breaking completely. The situation quickly became critical. The previously solid defense line was now teetering on the brink of collapse. The spearmen and cart drivers, whose morale had begun to wane, were starting to panic. The original battle plan is no longer effective. We have to eliminate these aberrant murlocs as quickly as possible. If the longer this drags on, the more terrifying they'll become. With that realization, Matthew could no longer stand idle. He once again felt the eerie weight of misfortune pressing down on him. His scattered thoughts began to focus, and Matthew tore open a scroll. A powerful fireball formed before him, flying forward amidst the soldiers' cheers. Ralph, ever observant, noticed with delight that the fireball summoned from the scroll was slightly smaller and slower than the one Matthew had cast earlier. This discovery thrilled the old steward. Boom! The swirling fireball exploded among the murlocs on the left. And though its power wasn't as strong as the one Matthew had cast himself, the density of the murlocs allowed it to still rip apart more than 30 of them. The pressure on the left side dropped significantly. The second fireball soon followed, crashing into the right side. The resulting explosion opened up a large gap in the dense crowd of murlocs. Seizing the opportunity, Angela directed the front-line spearmen and shield-bearers to reinforce the rear, rebuilding the defenses just as the murlocs were about to tear through the shields. The faltering defense line regained its stability. Angela immediately ordered the soldiers to replace their damaged shields, personally stepping in to decapitate any murlocs that had slipped through. The soldiers who had retreated from the brink of death wiped cold sweat from their brows, checking their gear while glancing with admiration at their lord on the cart. But just then, something shocking happened that made everyone freeze in horror. Leon, who had just stepped back to rest, suddenly leaped up, raising his blood-stained sword and slashed it down toward their beloved lord. The unexpected attack took everyone by surprise. Chapter 16, The Art of Spellcraft. Chapter 16, The Art of Spellcraft. Butler Ralph turned his head in horror. Though he had already drawn his rapier, it was too late to pierce Leon's lunging body. John, pale and panicked, sliced a mutated fishman in half and shouted, "No!" Beneath his mask, Captain Sean's face turned white. His mind went blank as terrifying thoughts raced through his head. Someone he once held in high regard, Leon, now seemed like a stranger as he desperately rushed forward. "I can die, but not my family." Leon's swift leap and devious upward sword strike caught Matthew off guard. White Wolf swordsmanship truly is fierce when faced head-on, leaving no time to dodge, only endure. Is this how the protagonist makes use of companions? What a peculiar trait. On Matthew's display, an icon appeared over Leon's head. Under control? Matthew had no idea who had taken control of Leon or when it happened, but he had to admit, the timing was perfect. He had used multiple spells and even his last life-saving scrolls were gone, exhausting the mana reserves of a level 1 arcanist. Even by super genius standards, Matthew had pushed his limits, reaching the pinnacle of a level 1 arcanist. The assailant didn't even strike directly but used the cunning tactic of controlling Leon, launching a surprise attack. Indeed, Matthew hadn't noticed the changes in Leon's stats in time, allowing the enemy to exploit a gap in his defenses. I should never rely solely on displayed data. At least this lesson wasn't learned too late. Yet Matthew wasn't hopeless, he still had a trump card, Yaya. Even a newly hatched wormling boasted a challenge rating beyond most mortals, reaching level 5. Though Yaya wasn't a true dragon, Matthew sensed her special nature. She had steadily grown in power since birth. In less than a day, her challenge rating had climbed from 5+ to 6+. Sensing Matthew's danger, Yaya lunged. Her horned head collided with Leon's chest. Leon's sword struck Yaya's gray-black scales, sending sparks flying. However, the force of the blow made the little creature yelp in pain, her sharp teeth bared. In her pain, Yaya used her strength to knock Leon down into the foul-smelling swamp muck. Despite being dirtied, Yaya agilely leaped up. Driven by instinct, she pounced on Leon's chest and snapped her jaws at his bewildered face. Crunchy. The emotions of the group plunged from despair to relief, like riding a roller coaster to salvation. Yaya's fierce expression was both cool and adorable. Just as everyone was feeling immense relief, a deadly shadow silently crept behind Matthew. A dagger with a blue sheen stabbed toward his back. The strike was seasoned and vicious. It came at the perfect moment, with Yaya too far away to save Matthew. If struck, Matthew's fragile kidney would suffer catastrophic damage. Massive blood loss and pain would paralyze Matthew instantly. This kidney strike was only the first part of a coordinated execution. Once the dagger plunged in, the assailant would twist it and deliver a crushing blow to the back of Matthew's head. Finally, twin daggers would come together at Matthew's throat to finish the kill with a clean slash. Deadly. The sudden attack threw everyone into panic. None could believe there was a second hidden assassin in their ranks, but Matthew had anticipated it. The moment the shadow lunged, sensing the threat lingering, Matthew had already taken a step forward. He did not fall bleeding and defeated, as people might have expected. Instead, Matthew turned to face the incoming shadow. His mana surged, flowing like a tide through his enchanted lenses, piercing the shadow's defenses. Typical spellcasters, always holding back a trump card, but without mana, your tricks are useless. The shadow sneered inwardly, his dark robes glowing with arcane light from protective enchantments, precious magical items meant to guard against deadly spells. The assailant, a seasoned killer of spellcasters, was certain that Matthew had no chance of surviving. No matter what spells Matthew cast, even a fireball, it couldn't stop him. The shadow still had a vial of Berserker Potion in his pocket. Once activated, it would nullify any negative effects, granting him unmatched strength and fury. It would give him the power to decapitate Matthew with ease. Such deadly precision. Such meticulous planning. The assassination was flawlessly executed, calculating every possible outcome, leaving Matthew's fate sealed in death. However, when Matthew's magic hit the shadow, the magical protections did not trigger. It felt as though Matthew had panicked and failed in casting the spell. But that couldn't be right. Consume 1000 XP to advance Arcanist to level 2. Spend 5 skill points to raise Sleep to level 5. The shadowy assassin, staring into Matthew's silver mask, felt an inexplicable sense of terror. An overwhelming drowsiness washed over him. Normally, his superior willpower allowed him to resist mind-affecting magic like sleep spells. His training made him highly resistant to most mind control effects. Yet the anticipated mental battle against the spell never came. Instead, sleep took hold effortlessly. His eyes slowly shut and he fell asleep. Unlucky for you, I'm no longer a level 1 Arcanist. You might have even helped me level up. My mana is fully replenished after leveling. I have plenty to spare now. Shocked, aren't you? A fresh level 5 sleep spell, unless you have willpower plus 10 or a legendary Iron Will feat, there's no way you're resisting it. You bastard, I finally got you. Too bad you didn't even make me use my last trump card. Stepping back nimbly, avoiding the assassin's falling dagger, Matthew turned, raising his staff toward the rushing Captain Sean. Sean immediately dropped his weapon and knelt, afraid to make any movement that could be misunderstood by the other soldiers. Angela dashed forward, her eyes filled with guilt and fear. After ensuring Matthew was unharmed, she shot a deadly look at the unconscious shadow. She raised her sword to behead the assassin, but Matthew stopped her with a gesture. No need to rush. Matthew gazed at his status screen, noting that his luck had returned to normal, and mused to himself. So that's how it is. Seems like Ralph has some stories of his own. I wonder what surprises he'll bring. Just like a player digging up hidden quests. Chapter 17. Working for me. Chapter 17. Working for me. John hurried over, glaring at the confused Leon, who was pinned to the ground by Yaya. His eyes widened in fury, and he raised his heavy cleaver, ready to bring it down with deadly force. Leon, startled and scared, tried to raise his sword in defense, but found that Yaya had already bitten it in half. All the soldiers around, even those from Leon's own village, remained cold and silent, watching indifferently. Attacking a noble was already a grave crime. Moreover, Leon had attacked Matthew, a generous, powerful, and well-connected lord. No one would help him, he was as good as dead. Just as John's cleaver whistled downward and Yaya prepared to finish the job, Matthew called out loudly, "Stop." He was under the influence of enemy magic and not acting of his own free will. But as my mother used to say, death may be avoided, but punishment is unavoidable. As punishment for attacking me, Leon will work for me for 5 years, after which he will regain his freedom. Of course, during his time of service, he will receive appropriate compensation. Leon, do you accept? A glimmer of hope flickered in Leon's eyes. John kicked his shoulder and pressed him to the ground, whispering sternly into his ear. Are you mad? You attacked the Lord. Thank the gods his bonded wormling stopped you. Nod your head and agree quickly. You're lucky to be alive. If the Lord sees potential in you, don't mess this up. Snapping back to reality, Leon realized what had just transpired. His face went deathly pale in horror. Learning of the punishment from John, Leon nodded fervently in agreement. At that moment, Leon had no idea that his original fate had been drastically altered. Meanwhile, Matthew picked up the mud-caked Yaya, gently patting her head, and cast a simple cleaning spell. Yaya curiously looked at her now clean paws, her big, bright eyes full of wonder. Yaya, Papa, is that magic? Can I use it too? Stroking Yaya's increasingly smooth and refined scales, Matthew compared her to the wormlings in his memory, noting that while her physical traits were slightly inferior, her intelligence was far higher. Could it be that the life bond between us has strengthened her soul and intelligence while she enhances my body? The thought of experimenting with this connection turned over several times in Matthew's mind before he set it aside for now. First, they needed to deal with the current dangers and safely return to the estate. He could investigate this further once they were secure. Raising his staff, Matthew pointed it toward the battlefield in the distance. Magic Missiles X4. A series of arcane missiles shot forth, unleashing 40 mana points. After the barrage of impacts, the 10 most aggressive mutated fishmen were sent sprawling, their shattered bodies littering the ground. The defensive line stabilized once more as Matthew leisurely settled back into the wagon. He knew he had to save his remaining 220 mana for critical moments. Angela stood guard at his side, continuing to command the battle while ensuring no one came within 5 meters of Matthew. The still-shaken soldiers, calmed under Angela's firm leadership, used their newly acquired weapons and reinforcements to fend off the increasingly powerful mutated fishmen. Every time a shield was damaged, John and Captain Sean would charge out as the emergency team, forcing the dangerous mutants back. Fresh soldiers quickly took over from their weary comrades. After several rotations, the soldiers' coordination improved and their combat effectiveness grew stronger, starting to resemble hardened veterans. As the number of mutated fishmen dwindled, the pressure began to ease, but Angela grew more vigilant instead of relaxing. Though Matthew's earlier attack wasn't her fault, she felt responsible. Angela never made excuses for herself. She continued issuing precise orders, ensuring no gaps in defense until the last mutated fishman fell to a spear thrust. Angela led the soldiers in meticulously clearing the battlefield, eliminating any remaining threats. The battle was over. The soldiers cheered in victory, relieved to have survived. Ralph emerged with a disappointed expression, whispering quietly to Matthew. Lord, we recovered 4 magical items from the assassin, 2 berserker potions, 6 healing potions, and a teleportation scroll. We also found a spatial belt with a 3 cubic meter capacity, containing 300 gold coins, several poisons, and some supplies no identifying marks. Stroking Yaya's slightly longer horns, Matthew nodded as though this outcome had been expected. Yes, if they were so easy to trace, then that event wouldn't have happened. Tally up the loot, have John and the others repair the wagons and handle the contaminated supplies. Then prepare to distribute the spoils and let's get moving as soon as possible. Ralph, though a bit frustrated, observed the others' excitement and kept his usual low tone, reigning in their exuberance. Don't celebrate just yet. Check your clothes and your comrades for tears and report immediately if you find any. Bring the bodies of the fallen, record their names and deeds. Compensation will be posted on the estate's notice board. Matthew hummed a tune, feeding Yaya strips of jerky while watching the soldiers clear the battlefield from the corner of his eye. Under John and Sean's guidance, the soldiers used their spears to poke at the corpse piles, finishing off any fishmen that hadn't been killed outright and cracking their skulls to check for loot. One by one, the bright red flesh cores were counted and carefully tallied for everyone to see. Ralph, noting the 50 flesh cores recovered, quickly did some mental math. These cores, when fully refined, should generate at least 1,500 gold in profit. Combined with previous loot, the net gain should be around 2,000 gold. While it's not enough to fully recover the 3,000 gold spent on supplies, the Lord shouldn't face financial difficulties anytime soon. Poor half-elf Ralph, unaware of how quickly Matthew, as an arcanist, could burn through funds, reveled in the success. Along with the spoils came the inevitable report on casualties. Ralph, somewhat relieved, delivered the news to Matthew. 4 soldiers wounded, none seriously, but they will require purification and cleaning. 3 porters dead, their bodies have been treated to prevent mutation. Once we reach Bay Village, they will be cremated and buried. Each family will receive 5 gold coins, 7 porters injured. 1 purification potion can treat 10 people. We'll need 2 potions which cost 20 gold. Overall, we've collected 50 flesh cores which will cost us 500 gold to distribute. We now have 300 gold remaining. However, due to the sheer number of enemies, it's difficult to divide the coins evenly. This was a tremendous victory thanks to your leadership, my lord. Though Ralph seemed pleased, his gaze questioned Matthew. My lord, are you sure you want to distribute that much gold, or should I take care of them? Chapter 18, Does the Lord Know Everything? Chapter 18, Does the Lord Know Everything? Matthew maintained a calm expression, ignoring Ralph's request for approval, and nodded with a smile. Under the soldier's subtle glances, he spoke loudly. Injured and infected, step forward. Clean your wounds under your cloaks, and then we will distribute the spoils. Don't worry, I remember each and every one of your contributions clearly. Top contributor Knight Angela. She commanded the battle and killed 512 mutated fishmen. For her significant contributions, she is awarded 10% of the total spoils, receiving 50 gold coins. She killed 26 mutated fishmen herself, earning 30% of the kill reward, totaling 7 gold and 80 silver coins. She heavily injured 16 fishmen, earning 15% of the injury reward, totaling 2 gold and 40 silver coins. For participation in battle, she receives 1 gold, 20 silver, and 96 copper coins. Angela's total reward is 61 gold, 40 silver, and 96 copper coins. As the top contributor, I also reward her with a healing potion worth 10 gold coins. Angela fee. Elling, bewildered and overwhelmed, stood under the gaze of her comrades and Ralph's urging glance. She stepped forward and accepted the shiny gold coins and potion in front of everyone. She never imagined that her first earnings over 10 gold coins would come from this battle during their journey. However, many soldiers were skeptical. While Angela's contributions were undeniable, Matthew's precise calculation of contributions and rewards, down to the last copper coin, sparked doubt among them. Even Angela herself couldn't quite recall how many mutated fishmen she had killed or injured during the heat of the battle. Is the Lord just making things up? Some thought to themselves. A few soldiers exchanged uncertain glances, their excitement tempered by skepticism. But Matthew seemed oblivious to their doubts, continuing with calm confidence. Second place in contributions, myself. I killed a total of 64 mutated fishmen, earning 30% of the kill reward, for 19 gold and 20 silver coins. I heavily injured 51 mutated fishmen, earning 15% of the injury reward, for 7 gold and 65 silver coins. For participation in battle, I receive 1 gold, 20 silver, and 96 copper coins. Total, 28 gold, 5 silver, and 96 copper coins. The soldiers watched as Matthew counted out the coins in his hand with precision. It was now clear to everyone that the Lord wasn't just saying things at random. At the very least, he wouldn't tell such easily disproved lies to the entire group. After all, it wasn't unheard of for nobles to go back on their word. Yet in their hearts, the soldiers hoped that Matthew was genuinely tracking their contributions and rewards accurately. Some even reassured themselves that, regardless of discrepancies, at least the collective reward of 1 gold, 20 silver, and 96 copper coins should be accurate. Third place, John Carls. Fourth place, Sean Radley. 32nd place, Medley. You killed 2 mutated fishmen, earning 60 silver coins. You heavily injured 4 mutated fishmen, earning 60 silver coins. For participation in battle, you receive 1 gold, 20 silver, and 96 copper coins. Total reward, 2 gold, 40 silver, and 96 copper coins. Hearing his name called, Medley jumped up excitedly, proudly raising his chin as he boasted to his taller comrades. Haha, I told you I killed 2 of those fishmen. Good thing the Lord saw it. HMPH? His comrades watched as he eagerly stepped forward to collect his coins, their eyes filled with a mix of envy and admiration toward Matthew. The Lord didn't miss a thing. Incredible, the Lord is a mysterious and powerful arcanist. Of course he sees everything we do. Exactly. Just like that assassin, Lord Matthew surely sensed his malicious intent long before he fell into the trap. Absolutely, the Lord's abilities are amazing. He knows everything. As each soldier, militiaman, and porter confirmed their rewards without any objections, everyone began to reach a consensus. Their mysterious and powerful Lord truly knew everything. Those who had harbored doubts felt relieved, though there were always a few who weren't entirely satisfied. 86th place, Katrin. You contributed to 1 kill, earning 30 silver coins, and 1 heavy injury, earning 15 silver coins. Wait, Lord Matthew, that's not right. I killed 2 of those fishmen, and I injured at least 3. My comrades saw it. Katrin shouted incredulously, scratching his head and looking to his comrades for support. One of his comrades, wearing a sheepish grin, nodded nervously before speaking up. Yes, that's right. Katrin definitely killed 2 fishmen. I killed 3, not 2. Ganon saw everything. Ganon, a tall, skinny militiaman, nodded quickly in agreement. Yes, we were all excited at the time, wondering how much gold we'd get for killing those fishmen. But none of us know how to count or write. Glancing nervously at the silent Matthew, Ganon's voice wavered as he added, "It was during the oil pitching. Maybe the fishmen's bodies burned up. Perhaps, Lord Matthew, you made a mistake." Instantly, the entire camp fell into a heavy silence. Everyone stared at the trio in stunned disbelief, occasionally sneaking glances at the Lord to gauge his reaction. Matthew stood still, seemingly deep in thought. Even old John, who was repairing a wagon, paused with a cold smirk on his lips. Next to him, Leon blinked in confusion before blurting out, "No way. The Lord hasn't been wrong before." To everyone's shock, Matthew calmly patted his head and said, "You're right. I made a mistake." The camp erupted into murmurs of surprise and disbelief. Ralph's eyes flickered with a cold gleam as he bellowed, "Silence!" The group immediately quieted down. The 3 men instinctively lowered their heads, their faces breaking into small smiles beneath their masks. "See, he's not all-knowing. Just a kid after all. He should have asked for more while I had the chance." Wait, why did he admit it? The thoughts varied among them, some feeling relieved, others growing greedy with new ideas. Chapter 19, Killing a Chicken. Chapter 19. Killing a chicken. Matthew turned his head to glance at butler Ralph. Ralph approached the nervous trio, counting out the coins they claimed to have earned, and under the watchful eyes of the crowd, handed them over. The moment the shining gold coins reached their hands, the trio's courage instantly grew. If they can do it, why can't we? Suddenly, the atmosphere in the convoy became tense and strange. Angela looked at Matthew with confusion, not doubting him but wondering why he was doing this. Nobles and lords are not supposed to admit mistakes. That's been the rule for thousands of years. Could it be that the Lord has his own plan? Matthew, of course, had no idea what his loyal knight was thinking. Just as he couldn't understand why some people, knowing they had no chance of winning, still chose the path of greed. Conveniently, these people were offering themselves up as examples. Matthew took a deep breath and asked calmly, "Is there anyone else who thinks their contributions weren't counted correctly? If so, speak up now and I'll correct it for you." His words immediately stirred the convoy, with many people huddling together, whispering and calculating their deeds. Only a few remained calm, silently watching the growing unrest. Soon 4 more people stepped forward. Ralph, with a wry smile, remained silent, inwardly blaming himself while coldly counting out the money for them. Matthew continued reading out contributions as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Captain Sean, cleaning the mutated fishmen's corpses, shivered instinctively and muttered to himself, "Some people really have a death wish." 99th place, Misura. For severely wounding 3 enemies, you receive 90 silver coins. For participating in battle, you receive 1 gold, 20 silver, and 96 copper coins. Your total 2 gold, 10 silver, and 96 copper coins. Lord, I killed one of the mutated fishmen. My comrade Carmel can vouch for me. 104th place, Ralph Carlyle, deceased. For severely wounding 2 enemies, you receive 30 silver coins. For participating in battle, you receive 1 gold, 20 silver, and 96 copper coins. A compensation of 5 gold coins will be issued to your family, totaling 6 gold, 50 silver, and 96 copper coins. This will be sent to your family after we return to the territory. If your family is not yet free, they will be brought to Bay Village and given the status of free citizens. The entire convoy gasped, staring at Matthew in disbelief. Compensation. Will the Lord actually pay it? He will. He's always honored his promises. Ralph Carlyle's family is lucky they'll be free citizens now. The Lord is truly merciful. Indeed, he deserves our loyalty. Hearing their genuine gratitude, Matthew remained calm, quietly steeling himself. I'm not a good person. I just want to survive, and to do that, I must impose my will on the majority. Only then can I defeat those gods who see humans as cattle. Only then can I resist the endless demon armies. Only then can I prevent the world from descending into apocalypse. In the old timeline, you couldn't achieve that. Now it's my turn. Let's start with a small goal: destroying the Netheril Empire, unaware of their lord's dark ambitions to drag them all onto the train of despair and death. The convoy gradually quieted down. 105th place, Halleck, deceased. 106th place, Zhang Kai, deceased. Everyone froze, staring blankly at Matthew, waiting for what would come next. The Lord raised his hand and gestured to Ralph, who had been ready to act. And then, carrying the sleeping dragonling Yea, Matthew retreated into the carriage. That's it, but there were 124 people who fought. What about the rest? Even if they didn't do much, they should at least get the 1 gold, 20 silver, and 96 copper for participation, right? Yeah, hey, what about us, Lord? We fought too. I severely wounded one of the fishmen. The money may be small for you, but I really need it. My family's in desperate need of money too. Lord, did you perhaps make a mistake? The murmuring voices made the atmosphere in the convoy strange once again. But soon they realized that no matter what they said, Ralph, standing silently in their midst, did not react. An oppressive aura emanated from him, weighing on the hearts of everyone speaking. Within 10 breaths, the convoy fell into complete silence. With his hands clasped behind his back, Ralph slowly shook his head, his piercing gaze locking onto the most unruly of the porters. His tone brooked no argument. Everyone ranked after 107th stepped forward. Ralph's voice was deep and commanding, and it instantly shocked the entire convoy. Only now did everyone remember how Ralph had chosen them 2 months ago. Out of 3,000 porters, he had selected the 100 who had endured to the very end. The porters who hadn't been called began to look around nervously. Those who had been the most vocal earlier now stood sheepishly. Hesitantly, they stepped forward. Ralph pointed to the 10 or so men and with a chilling voice said, "Anyone who isn't from Calred, kneel down." After a brief hesitation, all of them knelt. Ralph sneered, walking forward and grabbing one man in a black cloak. Without hesitation, Ralph threw him into a nearby mud pit, his voice booming as he revealed the information Matthew had given him. This man was not only cowardly, but unlike the other 16 who were disqualified from being soldiers, he caused the death of his comrades. The convoy erupted in shock, everyone staring at Ralph in disbelief. The man in the mud, Colorado, collapsed in despair. Now, everyone understood that Ralph had spoken the truth. They glared at Colorado with disgust and hatred. Every fighter naturally despised someone like Colorado, who had caused the death of his comrades. Colorado's face turned pale as he shook his head desperately, shouting at the top of his lungs, "It's not true. I didn't do it. This is slander. I'm sure someone saw his actions. Of course, we don't need anyone to step forward, the facts speak for themselves." Chapter 20, Frightening Monkey. Chapter 20, Frightening Monkey. As Ralph spoke, he took out a pristine, translucent white crystal and activated it. A beam of light illuminated the air, creating vivid images in the center of the convoy. Each fighter's battle scene and the slaying of the mutated fishmen appeared vividly before everyone's eyes. Wow, what kind of magic is this? I've never heard of it. Look, everyone's fight is captured here. Oh my god, I can see myself. Naturally, everyone marveled at the images appearing before them, their respect for the Lord deepening once more. Ralph proudly addressed the crowd. "This is our Lord's newly developed spell imaging technique. Look closely here." When Colorado was ambushed by the mutated fishmen, Ralph Carlyle came to his aid. Ralph Carlyle had already severely injured the creature, but this coward, instead of helping, pushed him from behind out of fear. The image froze on the moment Ralph Carlyle struggled in panic. The torn sleeve on his arm perfectly matched Colorado, who lay on the ground. The calm expression, Ralph slowly drew his thin sword and quietly whispered, "May the Lady of Magic guide Ralph Carlyle on his journey. As for you, the murderer who caused his death, I now, in the name of the Sir family and Lord Matthew, sir, sentence you to immediate execution." "No." Colorado, overwhelmed by fear, sobbed in regret. But Ralph, filled with pent-up frustration, carried out his and Matthew's will without hesitation, thrusting his sword through Colorado's chest. In front of everyone, justice was served. As Colorado fell, Ralph followed procedure, destroying his skull to prevent any mutations. The bloodied silver sword did not instill fear in the surrounding soldiers. Instead, they felt Colorado got what he deserved. While the soldiers remained unafraid, others were terrified. The 16 other men Ralph had previously called out knelt in fear, trembling as they kowtowed. But Ralph merely cast them a cold glance, his tone filled with disappointment. "You didn't fight, not even when the enemy was right before you. As punishment, you are stripped of the opportunity to become soldiers and will have your years of labor extended by 1 year before you can become free men." To their surprise, the 16 cowardly porters who had narrowly escaped worse punishment let out a long sigh of relief and hastily thanked Ralph. Ralph couldn't be bothered to explain what they had lost. He turned to look at the 9 men who had lied about their contributions. Only now did the startled men realize what had happened. If the Lord could catch Colorado's deceitful actions, he could easily uncover their lies. Panicking, they knelt down and scrambled to return the coins they had just received to Ralph. Ralph, with a sharp flick of his sword, sheathed it with a resounding click. He strode over to the first liar, Cartlin, and snatched his money pouch, snarling, "According to Netheril Empire law, any commoner or slave who deceives, steals, or robs a noble's wealth will have a hand cut off and be sent to the mines to work until death." Cold sweat trickled down Cartlin's forehead. He knew Ralph wasn't lying. Ralph didn't need to. Cartlin knelt, kowtowing and weeping. "It was my greed. I deserve this punishment." Enough of the act. You fought bravely in battle, never retreating, and even saved a comrade, so the Lord won't send you to the mines. But every lie you told about your contributions will cost you 3 times as much in penalties. You were supposed to earn 1 gold, 65 silver, and 96 copper coins, but as punishment you owe 1 gold, 80 silver. Remember, you still owe the Lord 14 silver and 4 copper coins. And stand tall, the Lord may forgive you, but I haven't. You'll take 3 lashes in front of everyone. Do you accept? Upon hearing the punishment wasn't death or a lifetime of labor in the mines, Cartlin let out a long sigh of relief. But the thought of losing all the money he had just received and even ending up in debt left him with a look of deep regret. Hanging his head, he muttered, I accept, you whip. Whip, whip. The soldiers nearby winced as they watched Cartlin stumble back to the tent, gritting his teeth through the pain as he washed his wounds with diluted purification potion to prevent mutation and infection. He emerged in clean clothes, still trembling, and the soldiers swallowed nervously. At least it was only his pride that was hurt, not his life. Just then Ralph clapped Cartlin on the shoulder and spoke harshly, This is the first and last time. You remember, our Lord is merciful. But he is also just. You do not test his patience with your petty schemes. Now it's your turn. While Ralph started a new round of discipline outside, delivering both punishment and warnings, Matthew was cheerfully reviewing his status. You've achieved a resounding victory, earning 1,000 experience points and an additional skill point. You gained 420 experience points from combat, along with 5 skill points all read. Why used? In total, you've earned 420 experience points and have 6 skill points remaining, 1 point currently unused. You have altered the fate of 120 individuals, gaining 642 destiny coins. What a thrill. Large-scale battles really are the key to racking up experience points and skill upgrades. Too bad this kind of opportunity isn't easy to come by. Still, now that I've started down the path of a lord, if I develop my territory and build an army, I can regularly wage large-scale wars, gathering experience points in droves. Wait, this might work well in the short term to rapidly accumulate power and increase my level as an arcanist. But without a solid foundation and proper development, the territory could suffer disastrous consequences. It would be like those players in my past life who relied on their ability to respawn, becoming arrogant and faily, and to understand their enemies. That led to their complete downfall. No matter how strong an individual is, they can't entirely ignore the power of numbers and organization. Just like my kingdom, build high walls, stockpile grain, and rule with patience. If I want to achieve great things, I must first lay a solid foundation. Chapter 21, Yaya is the mainstay. Chapter 21, Yaya is the mainstay. Humming a tune lightly, having temporarily escaped the threat of death, Matthew felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from his heart. Now he began to cheerfully tally the gains from this battle. 70 pieces of flesh essence, which are materials for several precious potions. In the more than 10 years that the Crimson Moon has been waning, they should appreciate in value. I should take this time to buy more to accumulate some initial development funds. The assassin contributed over 300 gold coins, with 150 gold remaining for daily expenses, and Yaya's appetite is not small. Dark Fang X2 daggers made of fine mithril of excellent quality, attack +5, sharpness +4, durability +3, enchanted with magic break, fine craftsmanship rarely seen a sing. The one is priced at 3,500 gold coins in the market, and a set could sell for at least 8,000. Good stuff, might consider keeping them, circulating them would also bring me trouble. Just as Matthew placed the 2 dark fangs aside, Yaya, who had been fast asleep, suddenly opened her eyes. She curiously came over, sniffed the enticing aroma on the 2 daggers. Yaya, what's this food? Looks delicious. Before Matthew could respond, Yaya opened her mouth and swallowed them. This can't be eaten. What the hell? Yaya, who swallowed the dark fangs in one gulp, burped contentedly, saw Matthew's outstretched hand and affectionately rubbed his palm. Then she yawned widely and fell back asleep, snoring, while Matthew stared blankly at the data displayed above her head. Name, Yaya. Species Dragon Beast. Profession None. Age 1 day hatchling period. Challenge Tier 9+. Equipment Dark Fang X2 status. Dormant evolution in progress. Consume 5,000 experience points plus 500 destiny coins to promote perfect evolution. You consume 5,000 experience points plus 500 destiny coins. Is there such a good deal? Indescribable joy surged in his heart. Matthew looked at Yaya, whose size hadn't changed much, and carefully recalled the memories about young dragons and contracted creatures. I remember the number 1 official player contracted creature ranking was a young red dragon Orna. She signed with the official representatives from Huaxia, received significant nurturing from the entire official body. Before her fall, Orna's challenge tier reached 25 plus and she possessed a boss-level template. Destroyed the headquarters of the Church of the Goddess of Luck, taking 2 demigods with her to the grave. However, Orna's first perfect dormant evolution only required the consumption of 3,500 experience points plus some epic materials. The Fut. Yor of Yaya, gently stroking Yaya's delicate scales, Matthew originally thought she was just a common time dragon beast. But now it seems her background and potential are far greater. Agreed, although 5,000 experience is a lot compared to Yaya's perfect evolution, it's nothing. Yaya was enveloped in a deep blue light, her back's gray-black scales gradually became translucent, and her abdomen's gray-yellow scales also started to move toward her back. Matthew felt an inexplicable anticipation. Who doesn't like raising and perfectly nurturing? Moreover, Matthew is not in a hurry to quickly advance his Arcanist level. The main reason is, the power of a caster lies in the control of numerous spells, how proficiently they are used, and whether they have enough money. A rich Arcanist, his combat power destroys heavens and earth. A poor Arcanist, so poor they go sell spell scrolls. The secondary reason is, under Angela's command, the soldiers killed another challenge tier 1 plus aberrant wild boar. The experience returned to Matthew changed from the previous 10 points to now 5 points. While Yaya was evolving, Matthew examined the next 2 pieces of magical equipment from the assassin, a cloak and a pair of shoes. Shadow Cloak, tan from Shadow Lion Scorpion Fur, excellent quality, stealth +3, magic resistance +2, enchanted with spell barrier. Finely crafted, rare in stock, market price is 3,600 gold coins. Matthew didn't think too much, quickly draped the shadow cloak over himself. Stealth was barely useful to him, but magic resistance +2 was very useful. Not to mention the extremely important spell barrier. Matthew was very familiar with the spell barrier enchantment, having once relied on selling its spell scrolls to get through economically difficult times. The 3,600 gold coin price of the shadow cloak with a successful enchantment was worth 3,000 gold coins. Whether for spell experiments or combat, magic resistance +2 and spell barrier could bring him great effects. Swift boots, tan from wind serpent skin plus rock feather, excellent quality, movement speed +6, enchanted with assault. Another piece of excellent equipment, the speed reach +6, and it's also enchanted with a spell. Assault is a waste on an assassin but perfect for warriors and paladins. The displayed market price only 4,800 gold coins. That's not considering supply and demand. Matthew analyzed the digital display again, stored the swift boots, amazed at the assassin's rich possessions. Yet his handsome face carried a hint of a cold smile. A mere level 7 assassin, his equipment and spell scrolls together, easily worth over 20,000 gold coins. Richer than many high-tier professionals. Such a huge cost just to kill a mere level 1 Arcanist is a bit too much. Several suspicious targets flashed through Matthew's mind. He didn't have much thought about their purpose, as he only had one principle. E towards enemies, annihilate them completely, roar. A fairly impressive but youthful roar suddenly echoed by Matthew's ear. Yaya, completely changed, curiously looked at her own shiny silver scales with great curiosity in her little head. Yaya, why have the scales turned silver? But they look prettier than before. I'm hungry again, Daddy. Yaya, who woke up hungry again, naturally had all her desires met, turned into a little foodie, happily munching on dried meat. Matthew, who thought Yaya wanted to eat some magical creature flesh, carefully observed her changes. Although she was healed by a legendary time dragon, Yaya's wings were restored, but because she's not a true dragon, her wings are quite small, and as she grows, flying will be somewhat strenuous. Now, Yaya's wings have grown twice as large, able to easily envelop her entire body. Her dense scales also bore very concentrated magical patterns, slowly emitting fluctuations. More obvious than the physical changes was Yaya's data. Name, Yaya species, dragon beast. Profession, level 1 sorceress. Age 1 day hatchling period. Challenge tier 9+. Equipment, Shadow Fang expertise. Extraordinary expertise, Dragon Might LV1 releases a terrifying aura, exerting a will -5 pressure check on all nearby creatures. Extraordinary expertise, Banishing Breath LV1 breathes a time-linear breath at objects or enemies, banishing them in time for a duration of 1 month. Attributes: Strength 12, Agility 14, Intelligence 18, Constitution 14, Perception 20, Charisma 22, Luck +5. Evaluation, a mainstay not to be missed. Involuntarily gasping, Matthew looked at Yaya, who in just 1 day had already reached a total attribute of 100 points. Repeatedly looking at the time dragon's characteristic Banishing Breath, he strongly agreed with the displayed statement. Yaya is indeed the real mainstay. Chapter 22, First Arrival at Bay Village. Chapter 22, First Arrival at Bay Village. The blood-red moonlight illuminated the endless plains. The winding Silver Moon River cut across it, originating from the towering Supreme Mountains in the north, flowing through the frozen tundra wastelands, passing through the dark forests, and nourishing the surrounding millions of square kilometers of plains. Finally, it flowed gently and obediently into the ocean. The faint sounds of insects blew in from the wind. Watching the familiar village in the distance, listening to the babbling of the stream, Leon felt as if he were in another world. Finally back home! Warily glancing at the shaking bushes to ensure no aberrant creatures were hiding within, old John shifted his gaze away and patted his shoulder, asking curiously, "Is the salted fish from Bay Village really as delicious as you say?" Mentioning salted fish, Leon proudly raised his head, pointing towards the endless plains to the east, and replied proudly, "Our Bay Village is near the sea, and our salted fish are renowned far and wide for being fragrant and having a great texture. One can sell for 5 silver coins. It's just that there are too many murlocs, too troublesome. Our village can only go there twice a year, and each time we can't bring much back. Salted fish can make money, lots of murlocs." Old John silently noted this information. Although his steward Ralph would surely know everything about the tiny Bay Village inside and out, attitude is another matter. One must humble oneself when asking for help. As their gaze shifted from the two, Steward Ralph looked at Yaya, who had returned to her previous form, and silently lowered his head. Such a special young dragon was completely different from the information he had. As is well known, the more unique the appearance and abilities, the greater the potential for development. Is this part of the Lord's plan, or the arrangement of the mysterious lady? This thought was merely a fleeting one, quickly buried deep by Steward Ralph. His gaze catching his daughter diligently at her post, he whispered to Matthew, "We've arrived. I'll arrange for old John to scout the area first." Matthew didn't make a fuss, approving of Steward Ralph's arrangements, who had already proven his capability. But just then, a piercing roar spread through the air. A red figure, over 3 meters tall, charged over under the moonlight. It was enveloped in burning flames, yet unlike the aberrant murlocs that burn to death, it was vigorous. Flaming tendrils stretched out from its back, dancing in the air, causing ripples of flame. Aberrant giant, elite, challenge tier 12+. Infected, simple information, but it made Matthew squint his eyes. He had never expected to encounter an aberrant giant in Bay Village. This peculiar species was rarely seen even in his past life. The Crimson Moon could infect many lives, causing physical aberrations, but even 20 years later, just the initial influence of the Crimson Moon would hardly infect higher-tier life forms. Before he could gather more information, Matthew suddenly saw in front of the elite giant a nimble figure swiftly escaping. However, the elite giant was faster. Especially under the continuous illumination of the Crimson Moon, its aberration deepened rapidly, its original reason quickly disappearing, replaced by increasing physical strength. The elite giant swung a black thick club, nearly hitting the figure several times. Matthew could see that the petite figure, having exhausted too much energy, was almost unable to hold on. "Leon, come back!" Old John's familiar voice came. Matthew saw Leon rushing forward and lightly touched the staff in his hand. Huffy. Her lungs burned painfully, each breath felt like hot knives stabbing inside. Her legs also throbbed with pain, the aftereffects of overexertion began to show, gradually slowing her dodging speed. Rebecca's eyes showed a hint of regret. This terrifying creature, even if lured out of the village, would return as long as the Crimson Moon was not over. Not just tonight, but possibly in the future as well. Feeling the heavy whooshing sound behind her, Rebecca's previously drifting gaze became firm again. She struggled forward, nimbly rolling. As long as she had breath, she would lead this creature away from the village as much as possible. Splatter! A wet mud pit made her legs go weak. Unable to control her force, she fell headlong into the wild grass, the sharp grass cutting her cheek mask, creating a fresh wound, yet this pain was nothing compared to the despair in her heart. Rebecca turned her head just in time to see the all-burnt elite giant charging over, more than 10 tendrils from its back reaching out to grab her viciously. "No, even in death I cannot become such a monster." Determination flashed in her azure eyes. Rebecca clenched her dagger, glanced in the direction of the village one last time, and bid her final farewell. "Goodbye." Boom, boom, boom. The exploding airflow burst forth, mixed with the stench of char. The giant hand that was close at hand suddenly retreated. "Rebecca, how are you? Are you hurt?" A hand grabbed Rebecca's shoulder, pulling her backward, the familiar call entering her ears, bringing tears to her eyes. The voice of her older brother Leon. The narrowly escaped Rebecca quickly shook her head, then sensed something, and her smile turned bitter. The crimson moonlight was equally deadly. She had been contaminated. "Even so, I must take this creature with me." Before Rebecca could reignite her fighting spirit, a blaze of azure light flashed before her eyes, brushing past her hair, whoosh, striking the chest of the oncoming giant, tearing open a fist-sized hole in its already muddled flesh. The much wiser Leon quickly pulled his somewhat dazed sister back. He had noticed that his sister's sleeve and pant leg were torn, definitely exposed to the crimson moon's light, so they must purify her quickly, not forgetting to comfort. Our new lord has arrived. I now work for him. He has a purification potion. I'll ask for a bottle for you. Let's go. Roar! The stench-filled roar echoed over the open plains, the elite giant chasing after Leon and Rebecca. Its chest wound rapidly healing, its twisting tendrils constantly whipping, making crackling sounds. This terrifyingly twisted image, a normal person seeing it once would have continuous nightmares. Fuel ready, throw! A crisp and decisive voice spread, followed by the crack of a pottery jar shattering, black fuel spreading out behind Leon and Rebecca. The mindless elite giant plunged into it, raising its club high, aiming to cleave at Leon's head. Boom! The rising firelight created a fierce shockwave, instantly engulfing the elite giant. The burning serpents turned the dancing tendrils to char. Its vitality was extremely tenacious, continuously regenerating after being charred on the surface. The severed pieces falling into the fuel, struggling wildly, continuously jumping until they turned to ash. Over 10 arrows sped away, mainly aiming at the giant's head, which resembled a torch. Most were swept aside by its wildly swinging club, and a part lacked enough lethality, piercing the giant's skin but unable to inflict fatal damage. Matthew stood up nonchalantly, his gaze sweeping over Leon, who had survived the ordeal. He raised his staff, pointing at the not-too-distant giant. Health left 6 points. It's my turn to act. Chapter 23, The Dilapidated Village. Chapter 23, The Dilapidated Village. The elite giant is mostly dead, slain by the Matthew powerful acid arrow. Even though Matthew Sir had never learned or memorized this spell, he still managed to cast it successfully. Moreover, he successfully hit the elite giant's head, dealing a total of 8 damage, exactly enough to deplete its remaining health. Ding! Elite aberrant giant killed, 2,000 experience points gained, skill points x2, 231 destiny coins obtained. What? Destiny coins? So, had I not taken down this elite giant beforehand, at least dozens of people would have died at its hands. Or perhaps the little girl who was saved, her future achievements are not simple. At least her potential seems to be that way. With thoughts swirling in his mind, Matthew's actions did not falter. He waved over Steward Ralph and whispered in his ear, "Send someone to check the body, see if there's anything we can salvage, and remember to be careful. Bring potions, treat the little girl and others in the village, and arrange for night patrols." Then Matthew walked back to the carriage, having just braced himself. Now the backlash came. Surge after surge of mana continuously flowed into his body, bringing waves of energy, flush, and intense pain. This is a gift from the mana network. Under Matthew's incredulous gaze, his mana limit soared from 260 points to 280 points, then it stopped increasing. Also, Matthew felt an unknown will, silently looking his way, then stealthily disappearing. Only then did Matthew remember that the real Matthew powerful acid arrow spell had not yet been created by the arcanist Matthew. That moment was about 8 years in the future. This means, in the memory of the mana network, this is a brand new, unprecedented spell. Moreover, the mana network's assessment of it was very high, allowing Matthew to gain the maximum mana increase possible for creating a second-tier spell. This result did not surprise Matthew, as Matthew powerful acid arrow is remarkably damaging and effective, destined to be listed among the most cost-effective second-tier spells in the future. Almost all casters will learn this second-tier spell in the future, earning the highest evaluations naturally. Moreover, Matthew could distinctly feel that the gift from the mana network was not just an increase in mana limit. His understanding and construction of this type of model had also significantly progressed. If that's the case, my mind still remembers many spells that haven't been invented yet. Matthew felt an inexplicable urge, but he suddenly awoke, a cold sweat on his back, restraining this improper greed. Occasionally, creating a spell can be seen as personal talent and flair, but continuously creating many complex, exquisite, and practical spells would definitely make one seem monstrous. Even the former scenario would encounter many inexplicable dangers, such as an assassination at age 6, or the recent assassination attempt. If it were the latter, it might attract the attention of some terrifying beings. Without sufficient ability to protect himself, Matthew didn't think he could keep his secrets under the scrutiny of these terrifying beings. Once they knew about his memories, it would be a disastrous consequence. Suppressing the restlessness inside, Matthew continued to strengthen his mental fortitude, preventing himself from getting carried away while also becoming vigilant. Being passive like this isn't a solution. Going it alone always comes at a cost. Thinking this, Matthew turned to look at Yaya, who was sound asleep, noticing that the caravan had already entered Bay Village. A wave of tiredness and sleepiness hit him. After setting up several warning spells, Matthew slowly closed his eyes, starting his first meditation in this world. Many detailed memories and images surfaced in his mind, which Matthew accepted, absorbed, and integrated. However, the wash of these memory images didn't shake Matthew in the slightest. He merely absorbed these memories as knowledge without being influenced. Unconsciously, Matthew felt his consciousness as if entering a vast river, floating up and down with the waves. This sensation was addicting until he heard Yaya's urgent call by his ear. Daddy, come back. Suddenly awakened, Matthew felt his consciousness rapidly retract, his thoughts becoming clear and sharp again, gradually mastering his consciousness. Then he saw in his mind a face drawn with simple lines depicting his own face. Interestingly, when Matthew looked deeper, he could see that the lines composing the painting were actually spell models. Good heavens, is this the essence of meditation? Carving spell models into the soul, bit by bit reshaping and transforming the soul's form. This is light magic. It has 8 mana nodes, 3 of which have been optimized. Is this what LV3 looks like? Indeed, sleep magic has 10 mana nodes with 5 already shining bright. If I can optimize and remodel the 6th, does that mean I can elevate it to LV6? This is... The unprecedented scene of meditation amused Matthew greatly, but he soon felt fatigue and immediately realized the limit of meditation time had been reached. Both soul and body could no longer support it. Matthew then truly fell asleep, ending his first day in this world. March 2nd, 129. Thick clouds blocked the sunlight. A coolness slowly crept in. A drizzle blew for about half an hour, gradually subsiding, disappearing into the distant wilderness. A row of round wooden stakes enclosed the entire Bay Village, marked with gnawing and claw marks. The village had a wooden gate on each side, with several soldiers taking turns on guard duty, which was not there before. 4 muddy roads spread from the gates to the center of the village. Most of the houses in Bay Village were wooden, with low eaves dotted with iron hooks, currently hanging with several gray-white cod. Every household took advantage of the break in the rain to bring out their fishing gear, carefully mending and patching. The twice-yearly cod fishing trip to the sea was about to begin. This was almost the only source of income for the villagers of Bay Village, aside from farming. Taking advantage of this communal time, many people were chattering non-stop, discussing household matters or the yield of the fields. Of course, there was no lack of mention of the caravan that had arrived last night and the new lord. Especially those villagers who had witnessed it the previous night were now vividly describing it, giving an immersive feeling. Of course, that was an exaggeration. The truth is, they often exaggerated even more. Chapter 24, I want it all. Chapter 24, I want it all. Have you all heard? Sweetwater Town was burned to ashes by a black dragon, leaving only ruins. I heard too. The caravan barely escaped because of the Lord's orders, otherwise we'd be waiting for a new lord again. Keep your voice down, don't let the soldiers hear you. What can they do to me? Ha, what can they do? Next time you go into the woods to gather herbs or get attacked by wild beasts in the wild, you'll have to rely on yourself to get back alive, won't you? PFFT, relying on those soldiers who haven't trained for more than a few days. Not trained for more than a few days. They killed hundreds of monsters yesterday while passing through the misty marsh to get to the village. Exactly, and without much effort they killed the giant troll that had been attacking us often. The body isn't even fully burned yet, so what? Didn't you hear the soldiers conscripted at the outpost? The new lord is especially generous, giving each soldier who fought at least 1 gold coin. Everyone got at least 1 gold coin. The soldiers got at least 2, and old Sean was lucky enough to get 8 gold coins. 8 gold coins. My god, how many cod do I need to catch? How many salted fish do I need to make to earn that much? It's true, but it has nothing to do with us. They risk their lives every day, who knows when they might be gone. I don't care about the rest, I just hope the new lord is kind and doesn't raise taxes again. Yeah, if they raise them anymore, we won't even be able to afford black bread. The various conversations continued to filter into Matthew's ears, surprising him that after just 1 night's sleep his body had strengthened considerably, much like Yaya's continued growth. His stats hadn't shifted drastically, but as the effects persisted, Matthew felt that he wasn't far from becoming a versatile melee arcanist. Of course, even if Matthew could achieve that, he didn't have that much time. The urgent task was to gather more hands and bring Bay Village completely under his control. Listening to the chatter, Matthew noticed with some amusement that aside from some discussing him, only a small portion of the villagers were concerned about the recent giant troll. Most were busy preparing for the twice-yearly fishing trip. As expected, food is the most important thing. As some say, being attacked by trolls or beasts might might result in death, but without food one will certainly starve. The situation was just as Matthew expected, and he let go of all his worries. Even if he failed, they wouldn't lose much since they had nothing more to lose anyway. Calming his thoughts, Matthew soon returned to the Lord's manor. Outside were stone walls about 3 meters high, separating the manor from the village. The walls were marked with white cutting scars and there were several broken and missing sections, all indicating that this village in the wilderness was far from safe. That was why the previous lord of Bay Village, Knight Wood, after aging and weakening, sold the village and moved to the Karl Plains to start anew. As the easternmost territory of the Netheril Empire, the surroundings were full of dangers. Attacks from monsters and beasts were commonplace, and death and danger were constant threats. After experiencing so much, they became indifferent to it. At the entrance to the Lord's manor stood a luxuriously decorated carriage, and a rotund merchant with a round belly was bowing and nodding to Steward Ralph. Upon seeing Matthew step out of the carriage, the merchant quickly lowered his head and greeted him. Honored Lady of Magic, learned and wise arcanist, handsome and dignified Knight Matthew, your loyal servant Adam Smith has been waiting for some time. Hearing Adam Smith's somewhat peculiar tone, Matthew recognized the man's origin. A merchant who had recently pledged loyalty to the Sir family. However, Matthew had to admit the fact that he had the guts to cross the misty marsh and come to the remote and quiet Bay Village just to show his loyalty in advance showed courage and foresight. Of course, there was undoubtedly an element of gambling involved in Adam Smith's decision. In the original timeline, he naturally lost his bet. But for safety's sake, Matthew checked his information. Name Adam Smith Tyrell. Race human. Age 36. Profession level 2 bard. Luck +2. Matthew nodded and entered the Lord's manor, discovering a brand new set of ebony furniture in the living room, likely a gift from Adam Smith. Sitting down without much hesitation, Matthew ran his fingers over the delicate carvings with an oriental charm, giving the merchant a slightly higher rating in his heart. Matthew had met many merchants, most of whom were driven by profit and short-sighted. Without understanding the essence of power, they usually ended up fattened and then slaughtered, only to be replaced by another batch by those in power. And so the cycle continues. In this world, wealth and capital do not represent strength because power has a more tangible manifestation. Adam Smith has brought 200 gold coins, 2,000 pounds of high-quality flour, and 500 pounds of rice. Steward Ralph reported faithfully to Matthew, clearly satisfied with the merchant's good manners. He was indeed a clever merchant. Looking at the smiling Adam Smith, Matthew didn't waste words and got straight to the point. How much cargo did you bring? Although unsure of Matthew's intentions, Adam Smith answered honestly. 400,000 pounds of wheat, priced at 5 copper coins per pound, enough to feed 2,000 people for a year, originally meant for trade with Sweetwater Town and surrounding villages. Valued at 200 gold coins. 5,000 pounds of iron ingots priced at 1 silver coin per pound, valued at 50 gold coins. 200 spears, each priced at 50 silver coins, valued at 100 gold coins. 20. 0 leather armors, each priced at 80 silver coins, valued at 160 gold coins. 50 longbows, each priced at 1 gold and 20 silver coins, valued at 60 gold coins. 5,000 arrows, each priced at 20 copper coins, valued at 10 gold coins. 2,000 magical plants, each priced at 5 silver coins, valued at 100 gold coins. 300 pounds of various minerals and magical materials priced at 10 silver coins per pound, valued at 30 gold coins. 100 bottles of basic holy water, each priced at 1 gold and 50 silver coins, valued at 150 gold coins. 50 bottles of medium recovery pot ions, each priced at 2 gold coins, valued at 100 gold coins. 2 sets of alchemical equipment, each priced at 500 gold coins, valued at 1,000 gold coins. Reassessing Adam Smith, Matthew detected multiple meanings in the cargo. A wide variety of goods means extensive connections. Having both low-end and mid-range goods means he has big ambitions, bringing magical plants, various materials, and 2 sets of alchemical equipment is clearly aimed at me. That's fine, it will save me a lot of time. Tapping his fingers lightly on the table, Matthew looked at Adam Smith's somewhat nervous face and calmly said, "Not bad, I'll take it all." Adam Smith's face stiffened but quickly returned to normal. Agreeing heartily, "No problem, it's an honor to serve the Lord." "Heh, nonsense." Smiling faintly to himself, Matthew placed 2 items on the table and slid them across. Chapter 25, The Lord is Hiring. Chapter 25. The Lord is hiring. Enthusiastically taking the items, after just a glance, Adam Smith's face changed, and with a tone of disbelief he said excitedly, "This is a space belt, and it's of medium capacity, worth at least 5,000 gold coins." In this one, swift boots with blue-green scales and a faint aura likely infused with the silk of rock feathers valued at 800 gold coins. And there's an enchantment. A highly practical one like assault. Its value reaches at least 8,800 gold coins. Seeing Adam Smith reveal a bit of expertise, Matthew knew he had come prepared, clearly a merchant with a story. Matthew smiled faintly. Sell these 2 items but keep it confidential. The 1960 gold coins owed for the goods will be deducted from the sales. I don't care how much you profit, but I expect the goods I want to be ready. Pushing a badge of the Sir family across the table, Matthew gave Adam Smith a deep look and said calmly, "Don't disappoint me." Holding the White Mage Tower insignia in both hands, despite all his preparation and confidence, Adam Smith still felt like he was in a dream after getting it so easily. From now on, I'm a merchant with backing. At the same time, Adam Smith felt an indescribable awe for the mysterious lord. The identity of an arcanist, the Sir family background, and the suspected alchemy skills all pointed to his bet being successful. Adam Smith also knew that all of this came with conditions. He would only enjoy such protection if he met the lord's demands and completed his tasks. When Adam Smith looked up again, he found that Matthew had disappeared from view, and standing before him was the smiling steward Ralph. Adam Smith's heart raced. His ability to read people as well as situations was quite accurate. He could see that the Lord didn't particularly care whether he completed the task or not, which was common among many spellcaster lords. But Steward Ralph was entirely different. One glance was enough to tell that he was sharp and not easy to deal with. Taking out a notebook from behind him, Ralph handed Adam Smith a piece of parchment, his eyes polite yet his tone serious. "These are the items the Lord wants. Most you should be able to bring, but keep these few secret." Adam Smith's heart tightened as he took the parchment, his face subtly changing as he quietly read, 2 million pounds of wheat, 1,000 gold coins, 100,000 pounds of high-quality rice seeds, 200 gold coins, 10,000 chickens, 50 gold coins, 10,000 ducks, 50 gold coins, 1,000 pigs, 500 gold coins, 500 oxen, 250 gold coins, 50 warhorses, 500 gold coins, crossbows x20, 400 gold coins, 250 pounds of casting materials, 50 gold coins, 100 magic crystals, 500 gold coin. Recruitment, mid-level blacksmiths, mid-level tailors, mid-level leatherworkers, and other manufacturing talents. Work in Bay Village for 5 years, each receives 50 gold coins, high-level talents 1,000 gold coins. Master-level talents 5,000 gold coins. Recruitment requirements, willing to train apprentices, provide knowledge transfer, sign work contracts. Participation in production and manufacturing is not required. After evaluation, they may manage the production plant. Recruitment, mid-level chefs, mid-level breeders, mid-level caretakers, and other livelihood talents. Every mid-level talent working in Bay Village for 5 years will receive 20 gold coins. High-level talents will receive 200 gold coins. Master-level talents will be rewarded 2,000 gold coins. Recruitment requirements, willing to train apprentices, provide knowledge transfer, sign work contracts. Participation in production and manufacturing is not required. After evaluation, they may manage the production plant. From the diverse range of goods requested, Adam Smith realized that Matthew was not like other spellcaster lords, solely focused on spells and mage towers. This meant he had more room to operate. At the same time, Adam Smith was astonished by Matthew's enormous appetite and felt the pressure mounting. Wheat and livestock are easy to acquire, but high-quality rice seeds are rare and will require some maneuvering at the southern ports. Basic weapons and equipment are also abundant. Even if the quantity is large, I can trade for some from others, but crossbows pose a bit of a challenge. Magic crystals aren't expensive, but the volume needed is significant, and gathering them in a short time won't be easy either. Recruiting all sorts of talents, this is a test for me. Or is he trying to accelerate the development of the territory? The cost of purchasing all these supplies totals only about 3,000 gold coins, but the remaining funds are to recruit talent. The prices he's offering are extremely tempting. It might be tough to get those currently in demand, but slaves or those nearing retirement. After a brief moment of thought, Adam Smith quickly weighed the pros and cons, determining that the task was achievable even if it required considerable effort. He felt it was worth it. The more relaxed Matthew appeared, the more Adam Smith trusted him. His changing expressions did not go unnoticed by Steward Ralph, who was slightly surprised but showed no change in his demeanor. Instead, he smiled and said, "The Lord said time is of the essence, the quicker the better, and also be cautious. Avoid the road to Sweetwater Town when you return. Adam Smith was shocked. He hadn't thought much of the news of Sweetwater Town's destruction by the Black Dragon. Instead, he had felt quite fortunate. Now, hearing Ralph's words, he realized there was more to this story, and he gratefully nodded repeatedly. "Thank you for the warning, Steward Ralph. I'll complete the task as soon as possible, and next time I'll be sure to bring you a gift." Ralph nodded noncommittally and said nothing more as he left with the documents, heading out of the manor. Adam Smith carefully placed the parchment into a silk pouch, then stored it in his space belt as he followed Ralph outside. As soon as he stepped out the door, he suddenly saw 20 or 30 ragged children, their clothes patched, excitedly waving another parchment while shouting in their young, clear voices, "The Lord is hiring! The Lord is hiring! Repair the village walls, 5 copper coins per day, lunch provided, enough to eat, wages paid daily." Before long, these nimble little rascals had spread the word throughout the entire village. Sitting in his carriage, Adam Smith watched as adults emerged from their homes, grabbing the children and asking them questions, marveling at Ralph's clever promotion tactics. He immediately thought of various ways to use children for spreading messages. At the same time, he gained a clearer understanding of Ralph's statement that time was precious. Adam Smith quickly returned to a 2-story wooden warehouse. He gathered his men, ordering them to quickly transport the goods to the Lord's fortress and then return to Blood Moon City as fast as possible. The Lord's orders come first. Follow the instructions of Steward Ralph and the others. Remember, don't cause any trouble or I'll have your hide. After giving harsh orders, Adam Smith tore open a life-saving teleportation scroll. A flash of azure spatial distortion appeared. Adam Smith vanished from sight, enduring the nausea and distortion of the spatial transfer, and within seconds he quickly returned to Blood Moon City. He had to hurry. Chapter 26, The True Purpose. Chapter 26. The True Purpose. The rising sun illuminated the verdant wilderness. In the fields by the northern riverbank of the village where spring planting was about to begin, faint weeds were growing. More and more people gathered at the northern village entrance. The buzzing noise of conversation filled the air. Many were attracted by the hiring announcement. Others watched from the sidelines, having finished their fishing gear repairs but not believing in this so-called hiring. In their view, most nobles only knew how to exploit them by collecting more taxes. Still, they were happy to watch the commotion. Since spring planting hadn't started, they had nothing else to do. The villagers of Bay Village were not wealthy, having just survived a winter, and most wore gaunt expressions. They wore coarse linen clothes patched in multiple places. What attracted them might not be the daily wage of 5 copper coins, but the promise of a hearty meal. In stark contrast to the noisy crowd were the cart pushers who had arrived with the caravan. They were all robust, with proud smiles on their faces. Having been arranged to rest in wooden cabins outside the Lord's manor last night, none of them wanted to leave despite their lack of freedom. Steward Ralph sat at the long table with Old John and Captain Sean by his side, while the village elder Field, whose hair was streaked with gray, introduced the villagers to him. All the caravan members lined up, except for a few soldiers stationed at the Lord's manor. Several wagons filled with goods were placed on both sides, attracting the curiosity of the young ones. Steward Ralph nodded at Old John, who then used all his strength to shout in a booming voice, "Quiet!" The noise instantly stopped. What really made the crowd listen wasn't the fully armed soldiers, nor Old John's burly physique. It was the box of shiny copper coins by Ralph's hand. Clink, clink. Steward Ralph picked up a handful of copper coins and gently tossed them onto the table, and the clinking sound of those bouncing coins captured everyone's attention. Done. Steward Ralph nodded to the people behind the long table, then handed out the prepared paper and pens, breaking the silence with a clear voice. The purpose of gathering everyone today is that the Lord wants to repair the village defensive walls. Anyone between the ages of 16 and 60, regardless of gender, can register and sign up. Each person will be paid 5 copper coins a day, wages paid daily with a hearty lunch provided. The work will last half a month, and for every day finished early, each person will receive an additional 5 copper coin bonus. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire village of Bay erupted in excitement. Regardless of gender. Is that for real? If the wages are paid daily, the most we lose is 1 day's work. Why can't people over 60 work? Too old can't handle the work, they're being excluded. Go call your mother and sister. Yes, and don't forget to call your aunt. People huddled together, discussing it in disbelief. Some quick thinkers eyed the idle children and had them hurry home to fetch the busy women. Seeing that the timing was right, Steward Ralph loudly continued, "All right, time is precious. Line up in 4 different queues according to your area and register. Children and elders can also come forward. If they register, they'll get a meal. Families that have all gathered will get priority registration. Line up properly. Anyone causing trouble will be disqualified, and soldiers keep a close watch." Yes! After the battles of the previous night and the trials of the long journey, all the men, except for the few timid cart pushers, had been drafted into the ranks of soldiers by Matthew. Each would receive 20 silver coins a month. Grateful for this, they were absolutely loyal to the Lord's orders and authority. Seeing these fierce soldiers, the villagers of Bay fell silent. Most dared not act out, while a few secretly pouted but didn't dare show their dissatisfaction. What's your name? How many people are in your household? Are there any professionals? Do you have any skills? My name is Cartman. I'm 31 years old and there are 5 people in my household. This is my mother, Hosserin, she's 47. This is my wife, Aina, she's 30. These are my 2 sons, Adam and John. I can do logging and carpentry. My 2 sons are already 12 years old, they can help too. They are too young. The Lord has other plans for them. Go queue over there, here's your number. Take it and come back for lunch later. A total of 20 people were registered and verified by Elder Field. In about an hour, all the population and household data of Bay Village had been thoroughly recorded. Arriving late with a sleepy Yaya, Matthew casually flipped through the data. A total of 2,346 people with 651 children under 15. 30 professionals, 15 warriors, 10 hunters, and 5 rogues. Only Elder Field is a level 6 mid-tier hunter. There are 1,455 people aged 16 to 60 and only 240 elders over 60. Compared to most villages on the Coral Plains, Bay Village had fewer elderly, as the area was more dangerous and severely lacked medical resources. Holding a thick stack of household records, Steward Ralph realized the immense value of this method. Now the entire territory's demographics are clear. If this approach spreads further, is this the Lord's true purpose? From this perspective, having everyone help build the walls was merely a warm-up for the plan. Perhaps I can learn a lot from this. Matthew remained calm, playfully teasing the food-loving Yaya, then looked at the dark forest a few kilometers away and said, "Tell Angela and old John to gather all the newly recruited soldiers, get their gear ready, and bring some construction tools. Today, we'll clear out the dark forest to ensure the woodcutters' safety. Assign Captain Sean to guard the supplies and watch for any potential spies." Steward Ralph nodded and quickly began organizing everything. Soon, everyone found themselves divided into 2 large groups and then further into smaller teams. One group of weaker middle-aged men was assigned to the village outskirts to dig trenches along the square route Matthew had marked. The weaker women were tasked with preparing lunch for the entire village. The stronger young men with logging experience were sent with the soldiers to the dark forest a few kilometers away. All the professionals were called forth, led by Elder Field, to accompany Matthew. Their task was to guard against the dangers lurking in the dark forest and resolve the long-standing issue that had plagued Bay Village. The Trolls. Chapter 27, Hunting the Trolls. Chapter 27, Hunting the Trolls. Crack. Crack. The fibers of the tree trunks could no longer withstand the weight and the force pulling them, splintering apart like the death throes of a giant beast, crashing to the ground with a boom, scattering decayed leaves. The carpenters came over, marking the branches to be trimmed, and dozens of people worked together to quickly divide the tree into sections and drag them away. Angela divided the soldiers, who had not yet undergone formal training, into 3 teams, holding shields and spears in the most secure formation. Physical training was a long-term plan, but the focus now was on coordinating and forming ranks. The villagers transporting lumber to the village had no idea of this. They thought their lord valued their safety greatly, and this subtly changed their mindset. Yaya joyfully glanced around, her black and white eyes reflecting the curious faces of the distant villagers. "Yaya, Daddy, what are they preparing over there?" "They're preparing to build houses. I'll build you a big castle in the future too." Matthew patiently answered the question, gently stroking her head while Yaya's body radiated a soft warmth. "Brother, is that the legendary dragon? It looks so cute. Is she the Lord's pet?" Rebecca snuck a glance and nudged Leon, asking in a low voice. Still recalling old John's battle guidance from the previous night, Leon remembered the scene where he was helplessly subdued by Yaya and with lingering fear nodded. "Yes, she's indeed a dragon, the Lord's contracted creature, but she's fierce and dangerous." Before Leon could finish his words, he saw his mischievous little sister sneaking up beside Yaya. Boldly, she pulled out a palm-sized dried fish from her pouch and temptingly offered it. "Oh no!" Glancing over and confirming it was just an ordinary dried salted fish, Matthew didn't pay much attention to the 15-year-old girl, focusing instead on sensing the movements around him. Yaya sniffed at it, detecting a strong fishy smell that wasn't her favorite. However, the little one enjoyed trying new foods. She stuck out her tongue, giving it a light lick before bringing it into her mouth. 1 bite, 2 bites. The moderately soft and hard dried fish was torn apart by sharp dragon teeth, and the strange fragrance released from the fish fibers combined with the fatty satisfaction easily conquered Yea's taste buds. "Yea, delicious!" Her eyes widened in surprise, savoring the rich flavor as she carefully tasted it, joyfully calling out. Yea's adorable demeanor filled Rebecca's eyes with stars, and she cautiously extended her hand, though still a little scared. Unexpectedly, Yea nuzzled her head against Rebecca's palm, gently rubbing and making a happy little foodie's call. With her fears fully dispelled, Rebecca cheerfully pulled out a small pouch, sharing the dried fish her mother had made with Yea. Watching the two of them nodding their heads in delight, Matthew's mouth twitched slightly. Perhaps the language of foodies is universal. They marched for about half an hour. Towering trees blocked out the sky, and thick brambles grew between the gaps. The bright sunlight was obstructed, making the area below quite dark, cold, and silent. This was the origin of the name Dark Forest. "Stop, there are footprints!" The nimble Elderfield parted the dense shrubs, picking up a broken bramble and lightly sniffing it, the foul stench of trolls who never bathe. "These must be the ones that frequently attack us." Old John led the fully armed soldiers forward, glancing at the pitch-black depths of the forest ahead and carefully asking, "How many were previously spotted?" There were 5 in total. The one that attacked the village last night was the largest and strongest. Now there should be 4 left. Fortunately, they don't have weapons or equipment. Each time they raid the village, they steal some sheep and then leave. Although Elderfield's tone was light, Old John could hear the hidden gritted teeth and understood his predicament. Trolls were strong, with mature individuals typically having a challenge tier of 7+, and they lived in groups. Trolls had extremely powerful regenerative abilities. For Bay Village, which had no spellcasters and was too poor to stockpile alchemical oils, trolls ran rampant. That's why the village had to compromise before. This was also why, when Steward Ralph explained their purpose to Elderfield, he immediately gained his support. "Let's retreat first, lure them over, and bring them into the traps." Old John had no intention of being a hero. Before they left, Steward Ralph had instructed him to prioritize the soldiers' safety above all. Not much choice, especially with our Lord's generous compensation policy. Despite thinking this, Old John's heart felt warm. Who wouldn't want a kind and benevolent lord? "All right, leave it to me." Stroking the haste scroll and speed potion in his pouch, Field happily patted his new longbow and confidently spoke. Nodding, Old John immediately turned to leave, intending to notify the lord who was setting up the traps and prepare for battle. Steward Ralph was busy holding up the map of the dark forest that Elderfield had provided, pointing at several red skulls marked on the outskirts. Besides the few roaming trolls, there are 5 areas that pose deadly threats to Bay Village. 2 kobold caves, 2 goblin strongholds, and 1 gnoll camp. Their numbers are large. Each of the first groups has up to 1,000, and the gnolls have about 500. Matthew wasn't very familiar with the situation in the dark forest, but after studying the data, he silently nodded. Clearing out this area to create a safe environment for development would be a long journey. Old John, moving swiftly, returned first, and Matthew received the message signaling Angela to begin preparations as planned. Calling Yea back, Matthew watched her excitement for the upcoming battle and silently acknowledged it. The future would only grow more dangerous, and to barely ensure their survival, increasing their strength in all aspects was necessary. Yea would have to work hard too. The villagers who had received the news were arranged to leave temporarily, while Angela directed the soldiers to start preparing. Everyone felt a slight tension. Last night's elite troll had put considerable pressure on them. Matthew watched the somewhat clumsy soldiers, fully aware that they had a long way to go, but this first step was crucial. It wasn't just the new soldiers who were growing. Angela, Old John, and the other commanders who also lacked combat experience were growing as well. There were several objectives for hunting the trolls. The first was to eliminate potential dangers and prepare for the expansion of the territory. The second was to test one of Matthew's theories. If successful, it could provide a continuous stream of funds for the territory. The third was to demonstrate strength, establish authority, and win over the people. Words are less valuable than actions. Chapter 28, Yea's Power. Chapter 28, Yea's Power. Hide well and don't make a sound. If anyone disrupts the plan, they'll face military discipline. Old John played the role of the strict enforcer, quietly scolding some distracted soldiers to break their pre-battle tension. Beside him, Leon licked his lips, recalling his previous encounters with trolls, all of which were painful memories. These trolls standing over too. 5 meters tall, muscular, and hideous with their brute strength and terrifying regenerative abilities had always been the nightmare of Bay Village. In recent years, the number of trolls in the dark forest had increased, from 1 or 2 at first to groups of 3 to 5. What was once a treasure trove for gathering herbs and magical materials had turned into a dangerous forbidden zone. Now, with the arrival of the new lord, would this change for the better, or would history repeat itself? Roar! A beastly roar echoed from the distant forest. Matthew felt a faint sense of threat approaching closer. Yaya lowered her head, shifting from her previous adorable appearance, cautiously peering through the gaps in the bushes and staring intently at the distant area. Field sidestepped to avoid a thrown rock, quickly ducking behind a tree trunk before swiftly half-turning to shoot an arrow. The sharp metal arrowhead pierced the troll's chest, causing it to roar in fury and charge harder at the old hunter. Having successfully drawn the troll's aggro, Field panted heavily as he sprinted, glancing at the trolls closing in from both sides. If it were his younger days, Field, once an avid hunter, could have kept running for half a day. Now, though, his stamina was waning and his speed was slowing. The pursuing trolls noticed his faltering pace and became even more excited, shouting in guttural troll speak. Field gritted his teeth and pressed on. He took it upon himself to act as bait so that the young men of the village who had not experienced real danger could survive. Crash! The enormous figure of the troll burst from the bushes, swinging a wooden club stained with dark blood, sending a foul wind toward him. Field leaped forward, rolling on the ground to dodge potential follow-up attacks before diving into the bushes ahead. Ignoring the thorns tearing at his skin, he narrowly evaded the troll's club and sprinted over a wide patch of dry leaves. As he passed a marked spot, Field stumbled dramatically to the ground, causing the trolls to grow more excited as they charged. The 2 fastest trolls took great strides toward Field, but before they could attack, the ground beneath them suddenly gave way and they plummeted down. Frantically flailing their arms, they grasped at nothing and fell into the deep pit prepared for them. Thud! Sharp spikes pierced their feet, causing them to cry out in agony. After painfully pulling out the barbed iron spikes, the trolls looked up to see that the pit was 6 meters deep, far too high for them to climb out. Seeing their comrades fall, the faces of the other 2 trolls changed, just as a bright silver flash streaked from above. Moving at lightning speed, Yaya pounced, instinctively opening her mouth. Banishment breath? Matthew watched as the troll, just raising its hand, was struck by the invisible breath, its massive body suddenly becoming ethereal before vanishing in a flash of light. The troll had been banished. It would reappear in a month or when Yaya dispelled the spell. In the blink of an eye, the fearsome 4 trolls were reduced to just 1. Yaya landed gracefully, dodging the swing of the troll's club, leaping up and slashing its chest with her claws. The troll howled in pain, bending low to sweep with its club, but Yaya lightly jumped, easily avoiding the blow, then headbutted its jaw. Boom! Blood splattered everywhere. The troll staggered back 2 steps, but its rapid regeneration had already healed its chest, and it angrily swung its club again. Observing from the sidelines, Matthew marveled at Yaya's agility and compact strength, reflecting on how important innate talent was in this world. Even though Yaya hadn't inherited the bloodline knowledge that other true dragons did from birth, her ability to learn was still impressive. It must be because my intelligence is so high, Matthew thought shamelessly. Initially, he had been a bit nervous, but now he was ready to sit back and enjoy the show, curious about what surprises his adorable little creature might bring him. At first, Yaya preferred to use her nimble limbs, sharp claws, and ferocious headbutts to attack. But as she grew rapidly, realizing the troll posed no real threat, she became bolder, using her wings to increase her mobility, attacking from different angles. Interestingly, once Yaya noticed the troll's troublesome regeneration, she began targeting its weak points, attacking its head, throat, and heart. Before long, the troll was covered in blood. While the wounds healed, the lost blood wasn't replenished, and the pain made the troll more fearful, its attacks growing slower as Yaya became more reckless. To others, it might have seemed like Yaya was learning and growing, but in their eyes, Yaya's terrifying killing ability made them gulp instinctively. Fear began to consume the troll's mind, as it seemed to recall a past terror. It dropped its weapon and fled. Yaya, puzzled, stopped her pursuit, tilting her head cutely in confusion. Matthew, unable to help but laugh, sensed Yaya's emotions and waved to the dazed soldiers. Surround him and capture him. The soldiers finally snapped to attention, with Old John leading the charge, guiding the shieldmen and spearmen forward. Shieldmen in front, spearmen behind, attack his legs first. Seeing the troll beaten up by Yaya, the soldiers were emboldened, charging forward with loud battle cries. The panicked troll had no will to fight, and once surrounded, it only flailed its fists, slamming into the shields. But it was just a small troll. Its strength was great, but not enough to break through the shields or knock down the professional soldiers. The soldiers had initially been afraid of the powerful troll, but after enduring several rounds of wild punches, they realized it wasn't as dangerous as they thought. It was just bigger and stronger, but not capable of dealing a fatal blow. Growing more confident, the soldiers pressed harder while the troll grew increasingly desperate, bleeding profusely as the soldiers overwhelmed it with shields and spears. Angela and old John couldn't help but smile, quickly yelling orders for the soldiers to maintain their formation and coordination. Such a good training opportunity had to be fully utilized. Seeing her punching bag taken away, Yaya blinked in surprise. Then she remembered she still had another troll. Dispelling the spell, the other dazed troll reappeared, and before it could react, Yaya pounced again. Chapter 29, Professional Soldiers. Chapter 29, Professional Soldiers. Watching the scene before him in disbelief, Elder Field had imagined many possibilities. The worst-case scenario: he sacrifices himself, the trolls escape, and Bay Village never dares to set foot in the dark forest again. A bleak outcome: the trolls are killed, but the Lord's soldiers suffer heavy losses. The Lord, angry and humiliated, gives up on developing the territory and no longer cares about the villagers, becoming a typical spellcaster lord. Field had seen and heard of many such examples. The best-case scenario: the trolls are dealt with successfully and the losses are minimal. In this case, Matthew the new lord would command the soldiers to hold off the trolls while demonstrating the destructive power of an arcanist, killing them swiftly. After all, arcanists were the true rulers of this country, and only an arcanist lord had legitimacy. But Elder Field never expected that the lord barely lifted a finger. First, the soldiers dug a large trap, and with the suppression of the contracted dragon, the trolls were easily dealt with. It all felt surreal to him. At the same time, Elder Field felt a strange sense of hope. Perhaps the lord can truly lead us to a better future. The first troll, exhausted, was bound with chains by the soldiers. Its skin was turning pale from blood loss, which had severely weakened it. The second troll held out under Yaya's attacks for about 30 minutes. Yaya, finding no challenge in the troll, released it and returned to Matthew, calling out, "Yaya!" The little foodie was hungry again. The waiting soldiers, under Angela and old John's command, rushed in with battle cries. The troll, dizzy and dazed, became their sparring partner, struggling for a long time before it was finally subdued. As for the two trolls in the trap, Matthew hesitated for a moment before deciding not to kill them. The opportunity to capture live trolls was rare, and he couldn't guarantee success after just one or two experiments. He needed more specimens. Old John looked down into the pit at the two lively trolls, feeling a bit troubled. Their strength and agility made it difficult to bind them. Fortunately, Elderfield came up with an idea. Bay Village primarily subsisted on rice farming but had an impressive secondary trade. Years ago, Bay Village was an outpost for the eastern province near the coast. It was meant to be developed into a port city for deep-sea fishing. Unfortunately, due to various reasons, support from above was suddenly cut off. However, we still have a large fishing net in the warehouse designed for catching whales. Half an hour later, with no escape, the trolls were scooped out of the pit using a large iron net. At first, the trolls were defiant, but Angela and old John led over 100 soldiers in beating them into submission. After 2 hours of effort nearing noon, they finally captured them, though still somewhat unsatisfied. "Tie them up tight. Don't let them escape. They'll be our training dummies from now on." Leon said this with a proud smile, though wincing as his injured lip throbbed painfully. The injury was a trophy from challenging the troll head-on. Although it hurt, his fear was gone, and he was determined to trouble the trolls more often in the future. Rebecca rolled her eyes at her goofy brother, uninterested in his antics. She stared curiously at the trolls struggling in the iron cage, still feeling like she hadn't fully woken up. "Did we really capture them just like that? Yaya is amazing. I wonder if I can become like Yaya someday. Master said that once I level up, I should be able to." The thought of becoming like Yaya and playing more happily with her gave Rebecca an overwhelming surge of motivation to increase her strength. Hearing his sister's muttering, Leon shook his head in exasperation, suddenly curious about her master. He asked, "Where did your master go?" "I heard Uncle John say that any mid-level or higher volunteers or professionals who join Bay Village get a 50 gold reward from the Lord." Rebecca's eyes sparkled with excitement at the mention of 50 gold coins, saying, "Is that true? 50 gold coins, that's 50,000 copper coins. I could buy so many dried fish. Yaya and I could eat until we're full." Stroking Yaya, Matthew couldn't help but twitch a smile at Rebecca's mention of her master, piquing his curiosity. However, he didn't have much time to search for talents. He had to rapidly develop the territory and build a professional army capable of fighting. Starting next year, the entire material plane would be in turmoil. Recalling the vivid memories of the Grey Tide, Matthew's face turned cold. "This time I won't fail." As the trolls were transported back outside the village, the busy construction site erupted in a frenzy. Despite Elderfield's repeated warnings for everyone to focus on work, most people couldn't resist peeking at the struggling trolls in the cage. The monsters, once so fearsome, seemed much less terrifying when locked up, boosting everyone's confidence. Some bold children picked up clods of dirt and stones, hurling them at the caged trolls. The trolls roared and growled, initially scaring the children, who quickly recovered and retaliated even more enthusiastically. Amusingly, even some of the adults looked tempted, though they were stopped by Elderfield and the soldiers nearby. Get back to work. There will be plenty of time for this later. Everyone must follow the Lord's orders, no slacking off. Make sure the trenches are deep enough. If monsters break in, we'll all suffer, so don't get careless now. That's right. The Lord worked hard to capture these trolls, not for you to slack off. Lunch will be ready soon and you'll have plenty of time to look later. Soldiers, keep an eye out. Don't let anyone get too close and risk the trolls escaping. Elderfield and John kept the villagers in line, reaffirming the Lord's authority while boosting morale. Everyone was itching to know what had happened, gossiping and working hard at the same time. Is it really those trolls? I mean, yes, it's them. See that lump near his eye? Old Kent's family was killed by that one. The Lord is that powerful. It hasn't been that long. No wonder Sean and the elder listened to him. They weren't this obedient to the old knight. Don't the soldiers have to work? They're professional soldiers now, getting 20 silver coins a month from the Lord. 20 silver coins a month? I want to join. Don't get your hopes up. Unless you're a professional, you don't stand a chance. Just focus on waiting for lunch. How much longer until lunch? I'm eager to get my revenge. Call me when it's time. I'll go too. Chapter 30, Daily Training. Chapter 30, Daily Training. Corn porridge on the left, black bread on the right. Everyone take one portion first. If you finish, line up again for seconds, but no one is allowed to take any home. Elderfield, looking much younger, shouted with authority. His voice carried great weight. Most people obediently complied. Any would-be thieves were quickly spotted by his sharp eyes and dealt with by a swift knock from his cane. Ralph, observing the newly dug trenches by the villagers, nodded in satisfaction, but then hesitantly glanced at the soldiers lined up for their meals, asking, Bay Village has just over 2,000 people. Relying on taxes alone, it's hard to maintain a force of 100 professional soldiers. Matthew, understanding the underlying concern in Ralph's words, nonchalantly shook his head and confidently set the tone. I'm not relying on taxes to support professional soldiers right now. This area is full of dangers. Only with a well-armed, obedient force can we survive. Ralph nodded in understanding, then pulled out his reports to brief Matthew. Adam Smith's goods have been fully delivered. He himself used a teleportation scroll to return to Blood Moon City this morning, and the others just left. The first batch of supplies should arrive in about 2 weeks. Stroking his chin, Matthew looked at the trenches that would soon encircle the entire village and said somewhat resignedly, The transportation is still too inconvenient. Travel is too slow. Once we have enough manpower, we need more routes. Ralph wasn't sure if Matthew was just venting or seriously planning, but he had learned that the Lord always had future plans. Wow, they even gave out sausages. And the fish soup is fresh. Are we eating too well? Rebecca, eating with the soldiers, was busy gobbling down the fragrant lunch while curiously asking. Recalling the days of gnawing on dry bread with salted fish soup at the outpost, Leon compared and decided he preferred the current life. The newly recruited soldiers were also surprised by the improved meals, but old John just sneered. Eat up, eat up. If you eat more now, you'll be able to train harder later. Saying this, old John happily picked up a fresh deer leg and took a big bite. Elderfield had brought this deer leg as a gift for the Lord, saying it was for the Lord's table. Field's skill was impressive. Despite the lack of seasoning and simple roasting, the flavor greatly surprised Matthew. The slightly charred exterior was wonderfully savory, while the deer meat inside was tender and melted in the mouth. Matthew had a hearty appetite, thoroughly enjoying the pleasure of the meal. Even though the pressure was great, he made sure to eat well. Greedy Yaya, already awakened by the aroma, happily gnawed on a crispy bone, occasionally taking bites of roasted meat that Matthew handed her, looking very content. Angela ate quickly, her mind focused on the soldier training methods Matthew had taught her. For personal strength training, soldiers can be trained individually, with special focus on those with potential. Daily training should emphasize cooperative combat routines, for instance, how to deal with powerful individual enemies or large numbers of enemies, or how to use different weapons and tactics in various terrains. In short, our soldier numbers are limited. They're not expendable cannon fodder. We need to maximize their abilities so they can be more effective. The Netheril Empire was a land of arcanists, but ordinary soldiers were still indispensable. After all, you couldn't expect high-ranking arcanists to charge into battle like cannon fodder, only to be brutally worn down. As the number of great arcanists increased, the Seventeen Council's influence and control grew stronger, leading to a natural class divide and knowledge monopoly within the Netheril Empire. Even among nobles, knowledge was guarded to prevent others from learning their secrets. If a knight's personal training granted Angela the skills of a professional and mastery of more combat techniques and weapons, it was because nobles trained them to be effective tools and qualified enforcers. Then the knowledge Matthew imparted to her was the foundation upon which many skilled lords and Netheril generals built their reputations. Seeing Angela so eager, Matthew reminded her, "Be strict but not harsh. Make sure their treatment is good. If anything is missing, go straight to Ralph." Training and selecting professional soldiers is currently the top priority in developing the territory. Matthew spoke with intent and Angela listened with care. Roasting meat nearby, Field caught every word, recalling last night's conversation with Captain Sean and all the Lord's actions up to this point. Without hesitation, he asked, "Lord, do we still need more soldiers? How should we choose and recruit them?" Matthew responded with a mysterious smile, looking at the somewhat scrawny villagers of Bay Village, and said in a calm tone, "Anyone who can keep up with the training intensity can sign up for selection, but there's only one chance every 2 weeks. Becoming a professional soldier had its conditions, but Field didn't mind that. He was more concerned that Matthew wasn't opposed to the villagers becoming professional soldiers, which showed a high level of trust, exactly what Field wanted to know. On a clearing in the wilderness, 104 soldiers stood in 4 neat rows. They marched forward in unison under Old John's command. Never having trained in this before, their movements were a bit uncoordinated. Angela patiently explained the key points of marching in formation. Occasionally, she would have Old John discipline any soldier who was too careless. After half an hour of marching practice, they moved on to battlefield formation drills. Shieldmen at the front, spearmen behind, they followed orders, advancing step by step or moving side to side. A large group of children watched for a while, disappointed not to see the swordplay and weapon demonstrations they enjoyed. Most of the children soon ran off to bother the trolls. A smaller group of children stayed to learn in secret, as instructed by Captain Sean and the Elder. In other villages, becoming a Lord soldier wasn't considered a great path. There were few opportunities for advancement, and it was a dangerous job. But in Bay Village, things were different. Here, they were always in danger, and only strong military power could make them feel safe. 2 hours of formation drills left the once enthusiastic soldiers groaning, with many unable to understand the purpose of such training. Split them into teams and pick out the sharpest ones for sparring. Please follow and favorite for more. Chapter 31, The Power of the Collective. Chapter 31, The Power of the Collective. Angela, having grasped some new insights, quickly selected the most obedient soldiers and formed them into a special squad. The other soldiers found it odd but didn't understand the significance, continuing to perform their duties half-heartedly. Some soldiers, catching on, quickly followed suit and tightened their discipline, eventually getting selected. Sometimes the difference in personal fate comes down to small choices. Just like with Matthew and his former companions. To undermine the Netheril Empire, Matthew and his companions had once conducted extensive investigations and preparations. They quickly uncovered many systemic issues within the Empire's structure. The Seventeen Council, representing the 7 towers, the High Arcanists, and the caster elite, prioritized their own interests. The needs and interests of the Empire's vast millions were ignored, or outright neglected. The only path to upward mobility was becoming a spellcaster or having a family member who became one. If a child showed potential, the Empire would detect and nurture them, absorbing them into its system. Yet most casters, due to their backgrounds, identity, talent, and resources, were destined to become assistants, followers, researchers, or even test subjects for higher arcanists. The system of the Netheril Empire was inherently distorted. The general populace had little loyalty, relying solely on the near-omnipotent power of the High Arcanists to maintain order. The aristocratic spellcasters, lords, and families existed solely to serve the Arcanist organizations. Their purpose was to gather resources and find children with potential to become future spellcasters. They served the organizations. They served the High Arcanists. They served the mighty floating cities. That's why, despite the magical advancements of the Netheril Empire, the living conditions of the populace remained at a medieval level. The betterment of the common people mattered little to the High Arcanists. Thus, the spellcasters didn't care either. Matthew and his companions had realized back then that the Netheril Empire wasn't truly a nation but a vast population controlled by a spellcaster organization. The only way to topple the current regime was to eliminate the High Arcanists. Now Matthew sought to walk the same path, harnessing the power that the spellcasters had overlooked. The power of countless mortals, the power of other professionals, the power of the collective. Charge! Break them! Old John led the way, charging forward with a wooden staff in hand. Behind him, 20 soldiers rushed ahead, eager to engage their opponents. They were bigger, wielded more mature weapons, and had more warriors in their ranks. Confident of victory, they were determined to be the best of the 5 squads and earn the honor of receiving a salute from the others. Across from them, Angela remained unmoved, calmly issuing orders. Shieldbearers forward, spearmen behind, hold your positions, keep the formation, advance. Though they hadn't fully synchronized yet, the soldiers Angela had chosen made a conscious effort to adjust their positions and maintain the formation. As they advanced, their steps gradually unified, working together and showing signs of teamwork. Old John refrained from directly engaging, stepping aside like Angela and shouting orders. Squad 1, flank from the left. Squad 2, attack from the right. Squads 3 and 4, hold the center. Angela remained calm, watching as the 2 distinctly different squads clashed. The tips of the wooden staffs were marked with white chalk. A hit to the head or mask meant a soldier was out. 2 hits to the torso also eliminated a fighter, while strikes to the limbs didn't count. At first, squads 3 and 4 charged fiercely, aiming to push through the shield-bearers. But the shield-bearers were also professionals. They couldn't be pushed back, and 7 or 8 staffs suddenly thrust out from behind the shields. Though the staffs were deflected, they had given the attackers a scare. Before the flanking squads could join in, the shield-bearers pressed forward and their staffs stabbed out again. Squad 3 and 4's soldiers couldn't dodge in time and suffered heavy losses, retreating quickly. As they fell back, their formation crumbled. The shield-bearers surged forward, stabbing in unison. The disorganized soldiers had no choice but to retreat from the fight. One warrior fended off 2 staff thrusts but realized that his teammates had been completely routed. He was soon overwhelmed, marked by white dots all over his body. Squads 1 and 2 intensified their attacks, but Angela's victorious squad swiftly adapted their formation. The shield-bearers turned to face them, firmly holding the front line. Outnumbered, Old John's squad was forced back by the disciplined formation. Soon they were pushed to the edge of the training field, unable to retreat further. Completely defeated. The defeated soldiers wore grim expressions. They couldn't comprehend how they had been unable to break through such a stiff and simple defense. Matthew wasn't surprised by the result. Netheral's forces were heavily reliant on their arcanists. Ordinary soldiers and troops were often just fodder to draw fire, decent in defense, but mediocre in open-field engagements. Old John was equally perplexed, replaying the battle in his mind and sensing something was off. In small-scale skirmishes, shouldn't individual strength be enough to break through formations? Wasn't shield-bearing too rigid? The victorious soldiers from Angela's squad, still in disbelief, fought 3 more battles against the other squads. Despite sustaining some losses, they emerged victorious in each one. Triumphant, they looked smugly at their defeated peers, already planning to show off after training. The other soldiers, feeling humiliated, now understood the purpose of the seemingly rigid formation drills. Seeing Angela's squad basking in their victory, the other soldiers felt a pang of regret and secretly vowed to train harder. In the next practice, they would get their revenge. Soon, with calls echoing across the field, the training area grew even more lively. Chapter 32, Motivation comes from comparison. Chapter 32, Motivation comes from comparison. Why do they get to sit at a separate table and even have fresh grilled meat? They won. Why do they have brand new training uniforms? They won. Why do they get Old John's guidance? We need to improve our skills too. They won. A one response silenced the complaints of over 80 soldiers. Though they were dissatisfied, a loss was still a loss. Every soldier redoubled their efforts during training, determined to improve. Angela's team, having received privileges, also felt the pressure to keep their newly won status. They trained just as hard, not wanting to lose their newly elevated privileges and pride. By ensuring a certain level of fairness, using simple comparisons can motivate most soldiers and improve training results, thus enhancing combat effectiveness. Matthew thoroughly discussed this with Angela, sharing all of his experience. Ralph, standing nearby, felt both pleased and resigned. Angela, gradually understanding more, nodded with determination and confidence. She saluted Matthew and returned to the training grounds to drill the soldiers even harder. If we want to ensure effective training, we need plenty of meat. Also, some magical creature meat will be required to replenish their energy. Ralph calculated the costs, seemingly discussing the current difficulties but subtly reminding Matthew, raising these professional soldiers requires considerable resources. With the current conditions in Bay Village, supporting both Matthew and the soldiers' consumption isn't sustainable. Did Matthew understand? Of course he did. However, he wouldn't tell Ralph that training more capable subordinates would significantly reduce the time Matthew needed to grow stronger. No problem, we'll buy from the villagers. Everyone here is too poor, and once they have money, they'll be able to pay taxes. Seeing that the Lord understood the underlying meaning, Ralph nodded silently and then sought out old village chief Field, who was supervising the villagers' construction work. Everyone should have had enough to eat this afternoon. Work harder and live up to the Lord's rewards. Carpenters, hurry up and process the delivered wood. The tools are ready, so work faster. Don't just dump the excavated dirt. We'll need to fill it back into the wooden walls later. And you lazy boy, don't slack off or I'll come over there and give you a whipping. Ralph, walking along, was surprised to see how diligently the villagers of Bay Village were working. He could tell they were genuinely giving it their all. Ralph's past experiences taught him that even though the Netheril Empire wasn't as exploitative of the commoners as other kingdoms, peasants rarely had good feelings toward nobles. Even when nobles summoned peasants to work, paying more than this, they could never extract this level of effort. Ralph still didn't quite understand the difference between working for themselves and working for the Lord. Although the villagers of Bay Village were not well educated, they clearly understood that building new wooden walls meant they would be safer and better protected. It looks like the digging is ahead of schedule by about 4 days. Everyone seems quite motivated. Village Chief Field, unsure of Ralph's intentions, spoke with a slightly deferential tone as he tested the waters. It is an honor to work for the Lord. Everyone will do their best to meet your expectations. Ralph gave him a knowing smile and shook his head, reassuring him whatever the Lord promises he will deliver. Completing the task with quality will only make him happier, and he will invest more resources and plans. He paused for a moment before patting Field on the shoulder. Currently, the number of soldiers is too low. The Lord intends to increase the count to 200. Except for those too old or weak, all professionals must enlist. Ordinary soldiers receive 20 silver coins a month, and each level a professional gains adds another 10 silver coins. Other people will be selected based on the average test scores for soldiers. Those who meet the requirements can join, those who don't will have to keep trying. Upon hearing this, Field's eyes flashed with concern but also a great deal of excitement. This was Matthew's most crucial move to gain full control of Bay Village. It was open and above board. Ralph's approach was to probe and inform Field ahead of time, giving him a way to negotiate and set terms. Any concerns or demands could be discussed openly. Once everything was decided, Field would have to fully support it. Field understood the situation well. Considering Matthew's background and abilities, the fact that he was willing to discuss matters so amicably was beyond what Field expected of most lords. He readily nodded and patted his chest in reassurance. That's wonderful. On behalf of the village, I thank the Lord. You've been worried about having nowhere to grow. Ralph, satisfied with Field's cooperative attitude, hesitated before revealing another part of Matthew's plan. There's one more thing. Any older or experienced professionals willing to share their training methods and help the Lord train more professionals will also be given work and paid the same as soldiers without having to fight. Even though Field had mentally prepared himself, Matthew's grand vision still stunned him. His mind raced with various thoughts. Is the Lord truly planning to stay here and develop the place, training more professionals? That requires a huge investment of resources. Could this be part of some magical experiment the Lord is preparing? No, that's not it. Is the Lord simply doing this for our benefit? That can't be. The Lord must be preparing to cultivate more professionals. But even if I object, others will agree. The Lord's money is too tempting, no one will resist. Gathering his complex thoughts, Field nodded in agreement. Ralph, pleased with his understanding, smiled and instructed, persuade the others. Let me know how many people are willing and tell me what you need. However, keep in mind that while the Lord is kind and generous, he has no tolerance for failure or wasted efforts. Without waiting for Field's response, Ralph turned and left. He had to calculate how much it would cost to support an increasing number of professional soldiers each day and month. The sun began to set. The crimson evening sky shifted into various shapes, some resembling horses, others like snakes, before blending into a sea of red under the gentle breeze. Across the wildlands, kobolds barked as they scurried past, disappearing into the distance, leaving only the sound of their calls. Leon, standing on guard, exhaled in relief. As night approached, the dangers outside the village multiplied. Although he didn't fear battle, he still preferred that the villagers didn't face unnecessary danger. Old John strode over with several dejected-looking soldiers in tow. As their deputy, he scolded them while they marched. You messed up on your first day of training, so you're punished with extra guard duty. I'll send someone to relieve you later tonight. Come on, let's head back for dinner. The old steward made some cod. I've heard the fish here is a local delicacy, really delicious. Old John's attitude toward Leon was different. This wasn't just due to Ralph's instructions. Leon's honest and kind nature made him quite likable, especially since Leon's training progress had been excellent under John's guidance, showing steady progress every day. John estimated that in less than 6 months, Leon would likely become a level 2 warrior. Leon was the kind of talent that with just one look made you realize his potential shouldn't be wasted. The other soldiers, filled with envy, continued their guard duty while sneaking in some extra training. Chapter 33, This Human is Terrifying. Chapter 33, This Human is Terrifying. A strong aroma wafted over from the other side. The crowd, who had just happily collected their pay and were ready to go home for dinner, instinctively slowed their steps. The people eating were the soldiers selected for the Lord's Guard. The bone broth, which had been simmering for hours, filled the air with a rich scent. At a table where 8 people gathered, plates of cod, which the villagers themselves could barely afford and usually sold, were laid out. Alongside them were slices of soft, fragrant white bread, making everyone's mouth water. But the most mouth-watering sight was the plate of several pounds of meat, perfectly seared to a crisp exterior while tender inside, emitting an irresistible fragrance. Minnie couldn't help but stop and stare. At that moment, old John returned with Leon, and seeing the gathered crowd, he smiled to himself before coughing and speaking loudly. Leon, the Lord places the utmost importance on his soldiers' well-being. There's plenty of bread and meat. If you perform well in training and battle, you might even get rewarded with the blood and meat of magical creatures. Feeling the intense gazes on him, Leon nodded stiffly. Well, we'll be following the Lord for years to come, and with such treatment, what else could you want? Ralph's strategy, recently learned and executed, proved effective. Many villagers, upon returning home, counted their shiny coins and couldn't help but feel a little unsettled. They wanted meat. They wanted to eat white bread. They wanted to keep those fat, tender cod for themselves. As night fell, the crimson moon slowly appeared, casting its eerie red light across the land. The moonlight's color was the same as the previous night, but it no longer carried the dreadful power of corruption and infection. Many villagers, under the cover of darkness, snuck over to the old village chief's house. Some people saw a group of soldiers escorting 2 trolls toward the center of the village, to the Lord's manor. Curious glances followed them, wondering what the mysterious Lord had planned. But soon, their thoughts drifted away as their yearning for a better life easily triumphed over curiosity. After spending the day finalizing the next half-month's plans for Bay Village's development, Matthew finally had some time to focus on his talents and abilities. He didn't need to rush increasing his arcane level yet, as he didn't want to reduce the experience provided by weaker enemies. After all, a large wave of experience would be available for harvest early next year. Besides leveling as an arcane mage, what Matthew most desired now was to turn the theoretical knowledge in his mind into practical skills as quickly as possible. Currently, Matthew's biggest problem was money. He needed a lot of it. Combining these 2 issues, Matthew decided to turn to his side profession. The representative of millions of players, West Continent's magical alchemist, was stepping onto the stage. Inside his fully equipped lab, alchemical glassware was meticulously arranged on their stands. This included beakers, measuring cylinders, test tubes, dropper bottles, flasks, and glass rods, all familiar tools from Earth. There were also unique magical devices such as pure water generators, movement restrictors, explosion-proof barriers, liquid extractors, flame nozzles, and multifunctional experiment tables, all tools designed by mages. Despite some unbalanced development in the Netheril Empire when it came to research, they were serious and dedicated. At the beginning of the game, many player mages tried to produce some experimental tools to sell to wealthier enforcers.